Chapter 178. Chapter 178, Mirror Light Body. This had to be a special physical constitution, Ling Han said decisively in his mind. If it was not due to his special physical constitution, Feng Yan would have been blasted to pieces by the eldest imperial prince by now. Though Feng Yan was at a disadvantage in their clash, he was still composed and calm. When he defended himself, he would also press forwards and attack, and every move contained a great explosive burst of power behind it. What special physical constitution could that be? Ling Han was observing very closely. The reason why special physical constitutions could be described as special was naturally because they had certain characteristics that made them special and unique. For example, Zhu Wujiu could recover from his wounds very rapidly. Hunyo could transform whatever food she consumed into her own reserves of origin power, and he, with his acquired special physical constitution, could greatly increase his defenses and, like a dead tree, would feel nothing even when he suffered serious injury, not allowing the pain to affect him and continue to display his battle prowess to the fullest. So what special characteristic did Feng Yan have then? Hong. Feng Yan and the eldest imperial prince endlessly clashed, and there was only brute force behind every fist, without any hint of technique. As the power behind their fists clashed against each other, the impact actually created a power wave that was visible to the naked eye, and this shock wave was spreading out in all directions, forcing the spectators to step back in retreat continuously. Ling Han had noticed that Feng Yan's complexion was becoming more and more brightly white, and this was definitely not due to the use of origin power. It seemed more like that was the real color of his complexion. Could it be mirror light body? He mumbled. Though he was still dubious, it was almost confirmed for him. The owner of mirror light body had the ability to reflect any attacks he suffered, as if he himself was a mirror reflecting light. However, even a special physical constitution could be split up into different categories based on the purity of the bloodline. Thus, there were roughly 3 categories for mirror light body. Weakest of all was the bronze mirror body, which could only reflect about 10% of every attack, and the next strongest was silver mirror body, which could increase the rate of reflection to 20%, while the strongest, the gold mirror body, could reflect about 30% of every attack. Don't underestimate the 10 to 30% of attack that could be reflected. It not only would decrease the power behind an opponent's attack, it could even become one's own power that could be aimed back at your opponent. In a simpler example, at first, it was 10 points of attack power against 10 points of attack power. Then, even if it had only become 9 points against 11 points, the gap would have increased by 20%. What more when it was 7 points against 13? That was practically a 100% gap in power. From the looks of Feng Yan, he should have a silver mirror body, and was able to reflect about 20% of the attacks. It was exactly this 20% of power reflected back that compensated for the difference of 2 layers in cultivation level behind Feng Yan and the eldest imperial prince. As a result, though Feng Yan was still at an obvious disadvantage, he was not defeated. That's not right. Ling Han shook his head. The 20% of power could possibly compensate for the difference in cultivation levels, but could not compensate for the inferiority of Feng Yan's martial arts technique as compared to the eldest imperial prince's son of heaven fist technique, which most likely should have reached black grade high level. It was not that this fist technique was of a high grade by itself, but with the installation of power of the nation, it could have might that could compare to a black grade high level martial arts technique. Since Feng Yan was able to stand against the son of heaven fist technique with a mere black grade, low level martial arts technique, then he must definitely have had some other ability. Otherwise, he would at least have to be on the same cultivation level as his opponent, and depend on the mirror light body to compensate for the gap in their respective martial arts techniques. What could it be? Ling Han could not help but become curious. The eldest imperial prince's battle prowess was outstanding. Though he had been stuck on this 9th layer of gushing spring tear for quite some years, it had also allowed him to fortify his foundations on this cultivation level to an unbearably sturdy level. His current battle prowess should be worth about 12 battle stars, and it was obvious that neither side had played their trump cards yet. At least, both these young men had formed chi, but neither of them had used it yet. If chi was taken into consideration, then their battle prowess could obviously increase further. The spectators were all watching dumbfounded. The eldest imperial prince was in the 9th layer of gushing spring tear and was a core disciple in his time. Yet Feng Yan could actually manage to not fall in a clash with him. This guy was really too strong. The 3rd imperial prince, Zhao Huan, Kinyi, the current generation of core disciples, most likely were no longer able to match Feng Yan anymore, right? Though they were on opposing sides, Ling Han could strongly agree that Feng Yan was indeed powerful. This guy was indeed a genius of martial arts, not only having mysterious means, but also a terrifyingly strong understanding of battle. And as he continued to watch, he would often nod in approval. Feng Yan just barely made the cut to being worthy enough to be trampled by him. The eldest imperial prince was like an emperor, while Feng Yan was like a demon god who freely displayed his domineering attitude, unreasonable and insolent. However, the two of them managed to keep their clash on even standing. In the condition when neither side was willing to play more of their trump cards, the battle had come to a deadlock. "Stop!" An old voice rang out, though this voice held within it incomparable might. Feng Yan and the eldest imperial prince both stopped attacking, though they still looked at each other fiercely, their battle spirit still high, as if wanting to continue battling to their heart's content. Lian Guang Zhu appeared, and the aura of an elite of spiritual pedestal tier spread out, causing everyone to feel as if there was a gigantic rock pressing down on their hearts. They could feel that their feet were strangely heavy and an urge to kneel down. He took one look at Ling Han, shook his head, and said, "Little fellow, you really know how to make trouble." Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "Headmaster, it's not that I am really good at making trouble, but this blind fool actually came to look for trouble purposely with me. Thus, I could only slice him up a bit to give him a lesson. But I am still very merciful and did not take his life." He was a little curious. Previously, Lian Guangzhu was obviously very optimistic about his martial arts talent and looked practically like he wanted to cultivate Ling Han like a disciple. Yet there had suddenly been no news from him at all, and now there was obviously a drastic change in attitude from him. What a sharp mouth that is skilled at overturning facts. Do you think everyone is an idiot? You crippled my brother's arms, and this is already a breach of academy regulations. According to the rules, you should be killed for your crime. Feng Yan said darkly. Feng Yan, though I have just come here, and did not see the start and finish of this whole matter clearly, but it seems as if it was your brother who had threatened to slice someone else's arm first, right? The eldest imperial prince interrupted. Since you did not see clearly the start and the end of the matter, then shut up. Feng Yan cast a cold glance at the eldest imperial prince. Pooh! Everyone was shocked speechless. Did Feng Yan actually reprimand the eldest imperial prince? A younger member of a minor clan actually dared to openly reprimand the eldest son of the current reign emperor. What kind of outrageously bold act was that? Immediately, the eldest imperial prince's face turned ashen, and a powerful killing intent was brimming in his eyes. As the saying goes, when the emperor goes into a rage, blood could flow over 10,000 miles. Though he was not the emperor yet, as the eldest imperial prince, he was still very powerful and mighty. You didn't see the start and the end of the matter either, so what are you blabbering so excitedly about? Ling Han opened his mouth and said to Feng Yan in castigation, "All right, this was an awesome guy too." Everyone else felt like they were about to lose their minds. Whether it was Ling Han or Feng Yan, where had they gotten such strong confidence to dare to create such a commotion? Headmaster, please apprehend Ling Han and hand him over to me to be dealt with. Feng Yan turned and said to Lian Guangzhu. Though his words were polite, it seemed as if he was requesting Lian Guangzhu to do as he requested, to make a request of an elite of spiritual pedestal tier, and someone who held the revered position of headmaster of the martial arts department. The others were all in disbelief. Though Feng Yan had offended the eldest imperial prince previously, the latter was still in gushing spring tier, after all. In this world where the most important thing was martial arts ability, the eldest imperial prince was far from being able to compare to Lian Guangzhu in terms of status. Lian Guangzhu's status was only below the current Rain Emperor in Rain Country, and was able to stand on even ground with the clan heads of the 8 great clans, commanding Lian Guangzhu. The others could not help but gather a layer of cold sweat on their bodies. "Headmaster!" the eldest imperial prince interrupted, looking at Lian Guangzhu. Lian Guangzhu sighed and said, "Please do not interfere in this matter, eldest imperial prince." What? When they heard his words, did that mean the Lian Guangzhu was going to obey Feng Yan's command? Old man Lian, if it was me who wanted to interfere, are you planning to stop me too? Wu Songlin appeared, looking coldly at Lian Guangzhu. Hiss, here comes another big boss, everyone thought. Chapter 179. Chapter 179, Olive Branch. Old man Wu, don't interfere with this matter. Lian Guangzhu waved his hand. I do not want to spoil our many years of friendship. Nonsense. Wu Songlin instantly rebuked. This brat has, after all, dealt someone a crippling injury, so he must definitely be punished according to the academy regulations. Lian Guangzhu's attitude also became unyielding. Wasn't it just crippling a piece of trash? Wu Songlin dismissed lightly. Master Wu, please speak cautiously. Feng Yan interrupted, actually carrying a hint of threat in his tone. Who do you think you are that you dare to reprimand me? Wu Songlin humphed, his right hand flashing out in a strike towards Feng Yan. He was an elite of spiritual pedestal tier, so though this strike was only a very casual move, it held within it unbelievable power. Origin power transformed into a gigantic hand that flew towards Feng Yan. Pung! Lian Guangzhu moved in the nick of time and managed to disperse the power behind Wu Songlin's blow. He frowned and said, Old man Wu, are you intending to go against me? As long as you don't touch him, I naturally would not bother to fight you either. Wu Songlin took one step back. Lian Guangzhu stared at Wu Songlin, and Wu Songlin also stared at him. 2 old men, whose ages added together came up to a total of over 150 years, were thus stuck in a glaring contest with each other. All right, old man Wu, I'll give you face this time. Lian Guangzhu nodded. Headmaster. Feng Yan spoke up, displeased. Hung, bring your brother with you. Let's go and see if we can still manage to reattach his arms. Lian Guangzhu frowned in slight impatience. Feng Yan did not dare to say anything else. He simply picked up Feng Luo and followed at the heels of Lian Guangzhu. One pair of the 4 great guardian deities each carried one of Feng Luo's arms, and the party left together. A chaotic conflict thus ended in this manner. Wu Songlin gave Ling Han a light nod and left directly. There were too many people here, so he did not want to reveal the relationship between himself and Ling Han. He only wanted to let them know that Ling Han was under his protection, and that was enough. Brotherling, if you do not mind, why not join me for a cup of tea? The eldest imperial prince said to Ling Han, smiling. Ling Han smiled and said, Many thanks for your help just now, Your Imperial Highness. This Ling Han is extremely grateful. Please, please. The 2 of them left together, and when he passed by Li Hao and Zhu Shuiyi, Ling Han said, The 2 of you go to the Heavens Medicine Pavilion and seek out Yuan Chu. Just tell him that it was I who told the two of you to go and stay at his place for a while. Thank you, big brother Ling. Li Hao and Zhu Shui, Yi said, filled with gratitude. Ling Han nodded. The reason why the two of them had been targeted by Feng Luo was because of him after all, so he would definitely not just stand by and watch as they continued to be victimized. The eldest imperial prince brought Ling Han with him to a tea shop and requested for an elegant room. The middle-aged man naturally stood guard outside the door, and only Ling Han and the eldest imperial prince were seated inside. I heard that Brother Ling is very friendly with various Grandmaster alchemists, and from what I witnessed today, that is indeed the case, the eldest imperial prince said. His eyes were slightly guarded, and there was also a sliver of heat in his gaze. Ling Han knew very well that the third imperial prince had, thanks to him, welcomed quite a few of previously hesitating neutral parties into his camp. As a result, the eldest imperial prince could naturally not stay composed in the face of this, and similarly extended an olive branch towards him. Before this, alchemists would never interfere in the competition for the throne as they stood completely above it. However, with Ling Han's appearance, many different unpredictable variables were all of a sudden added into the balance. If any imperial prince managed to gain Ling Han's support, that would be equivalent to gaining the support of the alchemists of Rain Country. This was an incomparably terrifying power, and even if the current Rain Emperor wanted to pass on his throne, he would have to consider things carefully. After all, this could possibly disturb the roots of the empire. Thus, the eldest imperial prince also hoped to maintain a good relationship with Ling Han. Additionally, Wu Songlin's previous attitude also reaffirmed this idea in his mind. Ling Han smiled and said, "Does the eldest imperial prince know what means that Feng Yan has obtained that even Headmaster Lien would be so partial towards him?" The eldest imperial prince frowned and revealed a furious expression. He could not help but smack a hand on the table and said, "That traitor!" He might not hate Feng Yan so much, but it was obvious that Feng Yan and Ling Han were deadly foes. Thus, he naturally would not mind presenting a slightly exaggerated front in order to form a closer relationship with Ling Han. This man has a special physical constitution and is also very powerful in battle. However, if it was just that, he could only at most obtain Lien Guan Zhu's recognition, but would definitely not be able to command the latter. But from the looks of Feng Yan's attitude, though he looks respectful on the surface, in truth, it seems as if he is Lien Guan Zhu's superior. "This is indeed strange," Ling Han murmured. The eldest imperial prince sank into a pensive state as well. What power had Feng Yan obtained that could actually cause an elite of spiritual pedestal tiara highly revered old headmaster Athato practically obey his commands? As the eldest imperial prince of Rain Country, he actually had no idea about any of this, and this caused a kind of unease to rise up in him. "I will begin investigating this matter," the eldest imperial prince said, then looked towards Ling Han and continued with a serious expression. "Brother Ling is a smart man, so I will not beat around the bush and waste time." "What do you want to say, Your Imperial Highness?" Ling Han said with a slight smile, though he already knew why the eldest imperial prince had paid him this visit. "I would like to ask you to assist me to ascend to the throne," the eldest imperial prince said. Suddenly, the aura of a ruler exuded from him, and his eyes shone with a powerful light. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "What ability do I have that I could actually help your Imperial Highness ascend to the throne?" "Ha ha ha ha, Brother Ling, you are being too modest." The eldest imperial prince laughed loudly before he suddenly changed the topic. "If I successfully ascend to the throne, the Ling clan would be a loyal subject that has performed an outstanding service for me. I would be able to name you a king." King! If these words were heard by the members of the court, they would definitely be shocked, numb by the weight of this promise. In the history of Rain Country, there had never been anyone who had rendered such outstanding service that they would be named as a king, even if they were not members of the Qi family. for royal subjects. This could be considered as the highest honor they could attain in their lifetimes. As a result, the eldest imperial prince's face was filled with expectation. He believed that Ling Han would immediately agree. However, he was very quickly disappointed, as there was no hint of change in Ling Han's expression at all. His eyes were clear and deep, as if great imperial power was only a fleeting scene in his eyes. Ling Han slowly opened his mouth and said, "I do not have any bit of interest in power." In his last life, he had been one of the strongest existences in this world, after all. What more when he had also been the alchemy emperor? How could a mere mortal emperor compare to the power he had in his grasp at the time? In this lifetime, he only had one target, and that was to become a grandmaster of martial arts, shatter the void, break through his mortal chains, and become a god. The eldest imperial prince was actually a very good speaker, but now he suddenly felt a kind of awkwardness that came from not knowing how to continue the conversation. This was because he had already revealed his best trump card. Yet Ling Han did not even spare him any consideration. Could it be that he had to yield the imperial throne itself to Ling Han? That has got to be a joke. He considered for a moment and said, "Brotherling, if I manage to ascend to the throne, I will allow you to have the chance to break through to flower blossoming tear." Ling Han could not help but put on a strange expression, casting a look at the eldest imperial prince. In Rain Country, due to the restrictions placed on martial arts and cultivation techniques, no matter how highly talented one was, they would still be unable to break through to flower blossoming tear. Thus, this oath of the eldest imperial prince could be considered to be unbelievably shocking. Even the elders of the 8 great clans would most likely be moved by this promise. However, for Ling Han, what was so difficult about breaking through to flower blossoming tear? He was an elite of heaven tier in his last life. Though I am not sure about the exact details, but it should have some relation with power of the nation, right? Ling Han was indeed quite curious and asked the eldest imperial prince with a raised brow. The eldest imperial prince was instantly struck dumb. Chapter 180. Chapter 180. Eye of Truth. The power of the nation could help an elite of spiritual pedestal tear break through to flower blossoming tear. Such a huge secret was only discovered by the eldest imperial prince under the most coincidental of circumstances. Moreover, this was not the actual flower blossoming tear, as it required the continuous installation of power of the nation to allow one to maintain his cultivation of flower blossoming tear. Otherwise, one would very quickly once again fall back to the mortal plane. It was precisely because of this that there existed only a single elite warrior of flower blossoming tear in the whole of Rain Country. When the eldest imperial prince set out this condition, he was actually being a little untruthful. When he ascended the throne, he would definitely stimulate the power of the nation for Ling Han's use. But the length of the period that Ling Han could access it, that was a different story. After all, by that time he would be the new Rain Emperor and have gained control over the entire empire and immeasurable power. Who would dare go against him or object to his actions? He had never thought that Ling Han seemed to have a deeper understanding of the power of the nation than even him, and Ling Han obviously did not place much importance on it either. He could not help but be flabbergasted. Women, wealth, and power, all of these were unwanted. He could still understand that, but that even the possibility of breaking through to flower blossoming tear could be set aside so easily as if it was something common. He was really at a loss by now. Such a man seemed to have completely no wants or desires, and as the saying went, a man without wants could stay firm in his resolution. What else could he offer that would successfully attract Ling Han to support him? Ling Han smiled and said, "In truth, I am only friends with the 3rd imperial prince, and have never become his subordinate. I can also become friends with your imperial highness. I have no desire for power, and have no intention to interfere in a struggle for power either." The eldest imperial prince finally looked better at this. He frowned slightly, considered for a while, then spoke. Does young Master Han have any interest in mystical power? Previously, he had already taken Ling Han to be a profligate, spoilt young master who had somehow managed to obtain the favor of a considerable number of alchemists just like Feng Yan, who had some kind of unknown background. As a result, though he still placed a lot of importance on maintaining an amiable relation with Ling Han, it was a different story whether he truly respected Ling Han or not in his heart. However, through this conversation with Ling Han, he did not dare underestimate this young man who was only 16 or 17 years old any longer, and unconsciously began to use a respectful address for Ling Han. Ling Han was surprised and asked, "Mystical power?" "That's right, mystical power." The eldest imperial prince nodded and began to explain, "Mystical powers are extremely unique. Some mystical powers could wound your enemies and possess formidable power. Some mystical powers could only assist and support you in battle. Some claim them to be a kind of martial arts technique, yet they will not expend your origin power. However, every kind of mystical power is extremely precious and could never be obtained even with a large amount of wealth." Ling Han naturally knew what mystical powers were. These techniques were extremely rare. Even he in his last life had not witnessed the use of mystical powers too many times. However, from the few times that he had seen them in action, they had left behind a very powerful impression on his memory. When he ventured deep into various historical sites, he encountered a kind of special physical constitution that could use a mystical power that could swallow the heavens and devour the earth. The user was obviously only in deity transformation tier, yet still managed to swallow him into his stomach, and he was almost digested. Though the holder of this special physical institution was later eliminated by Ling Han, if he was to be honest, then if both of them were at the same cultivation level, even if Ling Han was in the 9th layer and his opponent was merely in the conclusion of their battle could possibly be completely different. Unfortunately, he had not managed to pry the origins of this mystical power from the mouth of that enemy of his. Ling Han's interest was stirred, and he asked, "From the words of your Imperial Highness, you apparently possess a mystical power then?" "I do not, but the National Treasury does," the eldest imperial prince said with a serious expression. "As long as young Master Han helps me ascend to the throne, I will definitely hand over this mystical power over to you." Ling Han shook his head and said, "Your Imperial Highness is not being very sincere. If you can manage to bring this mystical power and show it to me within these few days, I can consider your offer. The mystical power is much too precious and is locked within the inner chambers. Even I am unable to enter within. So how am I supposed to bring it out for you?" The eldest imperial prince said with a little frustration. Ling Han had obtained a useful piece of information, and that was that the National Treasury had an inner chamber within. He laughed and said, "Then what is the effect of this mystical power? Your Imperial Highness should at least know this, right?" "Eye of Truth," the eldest imperial prince said, looking a bit guilty. He had never cultivated this mystical power before, but knew that the Eye of Truth would not increase one's battle prowess in any way and could only help one to see through false illusions. In his opinion, what use was there for this ability? Thus, he was naturally a bit guilty. But no matter how lousy a mystical power it was still a mystical power. That was why he dared to offer it to tempt Ling Han to support him. Ling Han was stunned for a moment before ecstasy rose up in his heart. The Eye of Truth, indeed, did not possess any ability to damage or harm one's opponent. However, it was even more precious than a lot of other mystical powers that had ability to attack, because it would allow one to see through all kinds of false illusions and see the real truth. In a simpler example, after cultivating the Eye of Truth, he need not fear any kinds of illusionary arts nor deceptions. And what was even more terrifying was the fact that the Eye of Truth would allow him to see the weaknesses of both himself and his opponent. Being able to see the weaknesses of others would allow him to maximize his attacks to the full extent, while being able to see his own weaknesses would allow him to improve upon them. Even if there was no way he could improve his weaknesses, he would still be able to protect these weak points of his better. Ling Han did not know whether there was any even stronger ability to this mystical power or not. After all, he had only heard of this kind of mystical power and had never seen it before in his last life. Who would have thought that in this tiny little rain country, there would actually be hidden such a powerful, mystical power? Ling Han thought for a moment. He had indeed discovered a considerable number of precious treasures in rain country, such as the remains of an ultimate warrior of shattering void tier. Perhaps when so many elites and ultimate warriors had gathered all those years ago, there had been a few that had only suffered heavy injuries but had not died. After the battle, they stayed in rain country and left behind such a powerful mystical power like the Eye of Truth. Ling Han was moved in his heart, but there was no hint of change in his expression. How could he so easily wear his heart on his sleeve after 2 whole lifetimes won? He asked, "Your Imperial Highness does not seem to have cultivated this mystical power. Otherwise, he may not take it out as a bargaining chip." The eldest Imperial Prince shook his head and said, "The Eye of Truth has a very special condition for inheritance. It is hidden in an eyeball, and one must somehow gain its acceptance and acknowledgement before it would directly enter into one's consciousness. Otherwise, it is only a piece of scrap." Ling Han gave an "oh" at this. No wonder he had not managed to find the mystical power swallow the heavens and devour the earth. So this kind of inheritance was completely different from cultivation techniques and martial arts, and was not depicted in mere words or pictures. Intriguing. He smiled and said, "When your Imperial Highness can bring that eyeball to me, we can continue to discuss our cooperation. But as for now, let's just be friends, all right?" The eldest Imperial Prince knew very well that empty promises would not be able to move Ling Han whatever he could promise. So could the third Imperial Prince, which meant he had no advantage over the latter. However, he had at least managed to befriend Ling Han, so other matters could be advanced slowly. "Young Master Han, there will be an auction at the Spirit Treasures Pavilion the day after tomorrow, and it is rumored that there will even be an incomparably precious foundation building pill up for auction. Are you interested to go take a look?" The eldest Imperial Prince earnestly inquired him. Ling Han could not help but put on a strange expression. This foundation building pill was naturally his, but he had never thought that it would actually become the most precious of auction items. He was just about to shake his head in refusal, but then reconsidered. Rain Country's overall level was too low. Who knows if there may be some treasures that may not be recognized for their worth. "I don't mind going for a look." He changed his mind. "Ha ha ha ha. Then I shall come receive you, personally the day after tomorrow." The eldest Imperial Prince was very satisfied. If he appeared in public with Ling Han, then that would definitely create an image that he had a very close relationship with Ling Han. By that time, those middle-class clans would have to reconsider their decisions. Ling Han nodded and took his leave. He still had to go and visit Li Hao and Zhu Shui. Chapter 181. Chapter 181. Promise. He was not sure if the eldest Imperial Prince would be able to find the secret Feng Yan was hiding, but based on his estimation, odds were low. That was because the third Imperial Prince had already taken action a few days ago, yet because of the appearance and interference of Lian Guangzhu, the Imperial guards the third Imperial Prince had sent were easily chased out of the academy. After such an incident, the third Imperial Prince would definitely have begun his own investigation on Feng Yan. If the third Imperial Prince had discovered anything, then he would definitely have come to inform Ling Han. Unfortunately, there was no news at all from the third Imperial Prince even by now, so it was evident that he had not managed to find anything out. When Ling Han arrived at Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, Ling Han first comforted Li Hao and Zhu Shui. For the moment, Li Hao would definitely be unable to return to the academy, but for Li Hao, this was definitely a blessing in disguise. What kind of place was the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion? A place that sold medicines. There may be nothing else here, but if one were talking about alchemical pills, perhaps at least about 1/3 of the supply of alchemical pills in the whole of Rain Country could be found here. And if you were talking about high-grade alchemical pills, then these pills were basically all distributed from this place to other parts of Rain Country. Ling Han now took Li Hao as a real friend, so he naturally would request Yuan Chu to provide an unlimited supply of alchemical pills for Li Hao, while he himself would also guide Li Hao a bit on his path of cultivation. Just think, he had both an endless supply of alchemical pills, as well as someone who used to be an elite of heaven tier to guide him in his cultivation. If Li Hao's prowess was still unable to improve drastically, then he really should find a piece of tofu and knock himself to death. Li Hao and Zhu Xue naturally understood this logic, so they could not help becoming even more grateful towards Ling Han. They both secretly decided that they would definitely do something for Ling Han in the future to repay him. After leaving Heaven's medicine pavilion, Ling Han had yet to return to the academy when he was stopped midway and invited over by the third imperial prince. Brother Ling. The third imperial prince was still exuding his signature dominating aura, though there was an added sliver of concern on his face. I heard that my eldest brother went to see you today. Since your Imperial Highness is already aware, then why do you need to ask a question that you already know the answer to? Ling Han said directly. He was not the slightest bit interested in the competition between these two brothers, and did not have the slightest intention to get himself involved in such a troublesome issue. The third imperial prince, laughed. I trust that Brother Ling would not be so easily moved by my eldest brother's flowery words. Ling Han could not help but smile and said, that may not be. He recited the conditions that the eldest imperial prince had set out, and the expression on the third imperial prince's face constantly changed as he heard Ling Han's words. Secretly thinking that the eldest imperial prince was indeed ruthless that he would even dare promise to name Ling Han as a king and assist him to break through to flower blossoming tear. One had to understand that even if the current Rain Emperor wanted to name someone not of the Qi family as a king, he would still encounter much objection from the members of the imperial court. There were too many high stakes involved in this matter, and it was definitely not something so simple that merely granting a title would be able to resolve it. If one were to be named king, then he should definitely have a piece of land to build his own kingdom. However, Rain Country had already been established for a few thousand years, and all the land under the administration of the empire had already long been divided amongst the nobility, so where would Ling Han's land come from? Unless Ling Han were to lead the army out to war and occupy the land belonging to the neighboring nations, and using the power of the nation to help Ling Han break through to flower blossoming tear was even more nonsense. If it was as easy as that, then why was there only a single person in flower blossoming tear in the whole of Rain Country? I know that Brother Ling is extremely loyal and would definitely not betray me. The third imperial prince laughed loudly, seeming to be very happy. However, Ling Han noticed the dark tone underlining his laughter. In a struggle for the throne, who would not be cold-blooded and cruel? Even blood and flesh brothers would be able to stab each other. Ling Han laughed and said, that may not be. If there was enough benefit in the game, then anything can be discussed. Pooh! The third imperial prince instantly choked, feeling as if someone had delivered a punch to his face. His expression was indescribably awkward. His face twitched and he forced out a smile and said, Brother Ling is indeed a good joker. Ling Han shook his head and said, I am not joking here. For example, if I were able to cultivate the eye of truth, then I will definitely become good friends with your Imperial Highness. Eye of truth. The expression on the third imperial prince's face changed drastically, and he finally understood that the eldest imperial prince had revealed the existence of this precious treasure to Ling Han. However, when compared with naming him as a king or using power of the nation to help him break through to flower blossoming tear, this mystical power was a much smaller bargaining chip. If it was not the fact that it was locked within the inner chamber, he would not mind taking it out and handing it over to Ling Han. After all, it was only a support-type mystical power, and after so many years, there was no one who had been able to obtain the inheritance from within. So he believed that Ling Han would not be an exception either. Trading a practically useless item for a powerful support, how could a genius like the third imperial prince not want to make such a profitable bargain? But the problem was that he indeed did not have the right to enter into the inner chamber. Hold on. The third imperial prince tapped his finger and said, after another 2 months, it would be my imperial father's 60th birthday, and the whole nation would be in celebration. At that time, my imperial father would definitely host a grand banquet for the guests and draw out some treasures from the national treasury for everyone to admire, so there would be a chance to enter into the national treasury. However, the lock to the inner chamber is the heaven and earth united lock, and unless one has the key, there is no way that it can be unlocked. AI. However, Ling Han's eyes lit up at this. He had the blood-sucking origin gold in his possession, which could change shape following his will and would be able to open any lock on this world. So this was nothing difficult for him. He said, "Then I really would like to enter into the national treasury for a look." The third imperial prince was a smart man, so he immediately looked at Ling Han in shock and said, "Brother Ling has a way to unlock the heaven and earth united lock." Haha, I learn a few tricks of lockpicking. Ling Han would naturally not reveal the existence of the blood-sucking origin gold, so he simply used an excuse for cover. The third imperial prince considered for a moment, then said, "All right, when I manage to win over the position to organize this event, I will bring Brother Ling into the national treasury. However, Brother Ling, let me say this first. There are a lot of extremely valuable treasures in the inner chamber, and they are extremely important, so you must definitely not take any of them. Otherwise, not just you, but even I will have to suffer the consequences. Don't worry, I am not interested in any other items," Ling Han said with a smile. The third imperial prince could not help but roll his eyes at this. He naturally would not believe Ling Han's words, but for the sake of obtaining Ling Han's support, he could not worry about these things. Moreover, he would be standing at one side to observe then, so he would definitely not let Ling Han do as he liked. There were risks, but the risk level was under control. "Then I shall take my leave first and quietly wait for good news from your Imperial Highness," Ling Han said, smiling. "Brother Ling, please." The third imperial prince nodded. Ling Han cast a look at Ziyan. The girl seemed to have changed into a completely different person and had become reticent with a colder attitude. He did not pay too much attention to this, though. It was none of his business, after all. When he returned to his own courtyard in the academy, he saw that Liu Tong and Li Si-chan were both there. Both of them had come to express their concerns. Afterwards, Master purposely went to visit Master Lien, but Master Lien said he had his own difficulties. He would unconditionally support whatever Feng Yin decided to do, Li Si-chan said. Liu Yutong said, "I used the power of my clan to investigate Feng Yin, but I was not able to find out anything. Just like you, he seems to have suddenly become powerful overnight." Ling Han revealed a pensive expression. So, Lian Guang, Zhu had actually said that he would unconditionally support whatever Feng Yin decided to do. That was a shocking promise, and the bigger the power in Feng Yan's hands, the more disadvantageous things would be for Ling Han. Of course, he himself had the Heavens Medicine Pavilion as well as the Alchemy Department behind him, and these two parties were definitely not beneath the Martial Arts Department in terms of power. If it really came to a full-on clash, then it would definitely draw the imperial family of Rain Country, as well as the 8 great clans, into this conflict. The Rain Emperor would definitely not allow this kind of internal conflict to ensue. It was strange. He was able to subdue Fu Yuansheng, Wu Songlin, and the other alchemists because of his alchemy ability from his last life, but it most likely was not to the level that they would obey his every command. Feng Yan had risen up so suddenly and in such a strange manner. The imperial family of Rain Country must have done their own investigation on him. If even the power of a whole nation is unable to find anything out, then you should not waste your time worrying about this matter, Ling Han said to Lu Yutong. Don't forget yourself. Li Si-chan pointed out, isn't your rising very sudden and strange as well? Chapter 182. Chapter 182. Reflection. Ling Han was stunned for a moment before breaking out in laughter. That's right. He forgot about himself. He had been the alchemy emperor in his last life, so he naturally took the way that all alchemists respected him and held him in great reverence to be something very normal. However, he had forgotten that he was only 17 years old now. In the eyes of the politically powerful, he was also an unstable variable, and an existence that could affect the stability of the reign of the Qi family, and if things came to a head, he could even be easily eliminated. If they knew that I was the one who had concocted the 9 foundation-building pills, they would be even more astonished, wouldn't they? Ling Han murmured to himself as he supported his chin with one hand. The foundation-building pills were divine medicine that could really affect the current delicate power balance in Rain Country, and if there appeared another 10-plus spiritual pedestal-tier elites, then things would definitely become a complete mess. That was because the cake was only so big, and if there was someone new added to the mix who wanted to get his own share, then that would definitely mean that those who already had their own share would have to let go of a portion of their own share for the newcomer, who would want to let go of what they already had in their possession. I did not think things through far enough, it seems. Ling Han reflected on his life since the moment that he had been reborn. It was still fine in Gray Cloud Town and Yuan City, but after entering into the Imperial City, it seems that he had been a bit too brash. But so what if I am a bit brash? With the identity of a black-grade high-level alchemist, not even the Rain Emperor would easily take action against me. Ling Han tapped his fingers in thought as light flashed in his eyes. However, the issue about obtaining the Eye of Truth would have to be reconsidered. Though I have never seen the Rain Emperor before, it is rumored that this emperor is extremely intelligent and very capable at maintaining control. Those 2 sons of his keep planning and scheming here, and they're right in this imperial city. How could he not notice at all? Who knows, there may be Rain Emperors, spies, planted right at the side of those 2 imperial princes. If, at the moment, I open up the inner chamber and retrieve the Eye of Truth, and was so coincidentally caught red-handed, then even the status of an alchemist would not be able to protect me. My only fate would be being executed for my crime. Otherwise, I would be imprisoned for life to keep concocting alchemical pills for the Qi family for the rest of my days. A sliver of a smile flickered at the corners of Ling Han's lips, and he thought, I was too strong and powerful in my last life, so no one dared to use underhanded schemes against me. However, after my rebirth, I have been a bit careless. Who knows? I may meet with unexpected failure in what seems to be something very easy for me. My priority now should be breaking through to Gushing Spring Tier and discovering the real secrets of the Black Tower. This is the most precious of all treasures in this world. I can't pick up the sesame seed and instead lose sight of the watermelon. When they saw his thoughts stray, both Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan asked at the same time, "What are you thinking about?" Right after their words fell, they both glared at each other. Why did she say the same thing as me again? How hateful. It's nothing. I just broke through, so I need to stabilize my cultivation first, Ling Han said, smiling. 9th layer of element gathering tier. Lu Yutong suddenly screamed. What? Li Si-chan was also shocked because Ling Han was very obviously still in the 7th layer of element gathering tier just the day before. He actually managed to break through 2 cultivation layers in a single day. Could he be even more outrageous than that? It's nothing to make a fuss about. Ling Han smiled calmly. In his last life, he had reached the formidable height of Heaven Tier. So how could such a small breakthrough in Element Gathering Tier cause him to feel ecstatic about? What a poser! Both girls gave him a look of disdain. "When did I pose?" Ling Han felt very wronged, but he did not want to bother himself to argue with the two girls, and instead continued to ponder over his sword arts as he wanted to form the 7th flash of sword chi. Once he managed to form the 7th flash of sword chi, his battle prowess would be able to rise to another level. More importantly, that would mean that he was one more step closer to Sword Ray. The conflict between Feng Yan and Ling Han caused huge waves at the academy because even the two headmasters appeared at the end of the conflict. Ling Han was still fine because Wu Songlin did not say much. That was why the majority thought that he had just coincidentally passed by and decided to uphold the justice. Feng Yan was a different story. The theory about him being Lian Guangzu's illegitimate son gave rise to a tremendous clamor, and the majority thought that was practically confirmed. Of course, there were still some who managed to look deeper into things. Lian Guangzu's attitude towards Feng Yan was not as if the latter was his illegitimate son, but rather more like a relationship between an old servant and his young master. However, this old servant had a very firm backbone, and the young master was still too weak. Thus, the relationship was not very distinct yet. Whatever the case was, Feng Yan had already become a very popular and mighty figure in the eyes of the academy. However, the fact that his younger brother had his arms sliced off by Ling Han, and he still was unable to do anything to Ling Han in vengeance, was still a hit to his image. Feng Yan had already announced that Ling Han was his foe, and he would definitely kill Ling Han within 3 months. If anyone dared to befriend Ling Han, then they would not be able to escape a similar fate. After these words were announced, the whole academy was in an uproar as they all thought that Feng Yan was much too arrogant. Putting aside the possibility that Feng Yan may be Lian Guangzu's illegitimate son, even if he was Lian Guangzu's old man, he still did not have the right to rage so publicly in the imperial city and announce his intention to commit murder. After all, this was the land of the Qi family and not the Lian clan. Unexpectedly, the imperial family did not display any reaction about this matter. No one knew if they were only pretending that they had not heard of any such thing, or thought that Feng Yan was too young and so decided not to call him to account for the sake of Lian Guangzu. However, the new auction of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion was right around the corner, because there were 9 foundation building pills up for auction this time around. This caused incredible excitement to rise up among the great clans and the other middle-class clans. Even the imperial family would not be able to maintain their composure. After all, there was only one person in Flower Blossoming Tier in the whole of Rain Country, and he had not appeared for many years, so it was unknown whether he was still alive or already dead. In Rain Country, the spiritual pedestal tier was doubtlessly the strongest cultivation tier, and those in this cultivation level would be able to do as they liked and practically disregard the laws of the empire. These people were really the elite of the elite. The foundation building pill could greatly increase the chances of a martial artist to break through to spiritual pedestal tier, so this naturally attracted the excitement of every known party. Who would not want a few more such extremely powerful people to provide additional security for their own power base? In the world of martial artists, everything was gained through power. The middle-class clans wanted to obtain a foundation-building pill in order to ascend to the level of a great clan, while the 8 great clans and the imperial family hoped to have a few more elites of spiritual pedestal tier to strengthen the power of their own clans and further secure their own position in the power balance. This was destined to be a very fierce competition. Ling Han was completely unbothered. Money was only something he needed to buy more medicinal ingredients and concoct more alchemical pills. Even if he had more of it, it was not of much use to him. When the day of the auction arrived, the eldest imperial prince had indeed arrived very early and earnestly extended an invitation to Ling Han. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan were long aware of the auction, and so had naturally come early. Thus, Ling Han would have to bring along the both of them, as well as Hunyo. Ha ha ha, so young Master Han has already plucked the 2 most beautiful flowers of the imperial city. I was still feeling a bit strange previously about the fact that young Master Han did not have any beauties by his side, especially when you are so outstanding and elegant. The eldest imperial prince laughed loudly, looking as if he had found a kindred spirit. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both blushed, but did not argue. It was unknown whether it was because they were a bit subdued by the eldest imperial prince's power, or had just simply chosen to admit indirectly. Meanwhile, Ling Han rolled his eyes. So this guy had previously thought that he had some kind of problem there, or perhaps thought that he liked men. He laughed and said, "Yu Tong and Si-chan are my good friends." "Good friends, I get it. I get it." The eldest imperial prince's smile became even more suggestive. Damn, this guy of impure thoughts. Ling Han changed the topic and asked, "Does your Imperial Highness also want the foundation building pill?" Though I have not yet broken through to spiritual ocean tier, my current cultivation level would, at most, continue to trouble me for 1 more year, the eldest imperial prince said confidently. If I managed to obtain a foundation building pill, then I would have higher odds when I attempt breaking through to spiritual pedestal tier in the future. Unfortunately, I am limited in my financial resources. Otherwise, I will definitely try to obtain all 9 foundation building pills. That way, my breakthrough to spiritual pedestal tier would be practically definite. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan could not help but look towards Ling Han. This guy very casually produced those 9 foundation building pills. If you manage to cling to him, then that would really ensure that you can successfully break through. Chapter 183. Chapter 183. Sun Ziyan. Ling Han laughed and said, "A few months ago, I was having lunch at a restaurant and coincidentally encountered a pair of assassins. Moreover, 3 members of the Black Cloud Army even died." The eldest imperial prince was stunned for a second, then asked, "Young Master Han was also at the scene on that day?" "N." Ling Han nodded and said, "That woman seems to be a member of the imperial family, right? From the looks of her, she has yet to reach 30 years old, and yet has already stepped into spiritual ocean tier. Her accomplishment is really something awe-inspiring." The face of the eldest imperial prince instantly darkened. He kept his silence for a moment, then said, "This woman's name is Suko Exan. She had entered the court just a few years ago. My imperial father named her as Consort Yin and dotes on her very much. Since young Master Han knows that the power of the nation can help one to break through to flower blossoming tier, then you should know that it can also help to speed up one's cultivation rate. However, the power of the nation is still limited, yet my imperial father actually used a large portion of it on a woman." The last words of the eldest imperial prince were already extremely traitorous, as he dared to actually criticize the actions of the current emperor. However, it was also very obvious from his tone that the eldest imperial prince was very displeased with this Su Kuexan. Ling Han thought back on the naturally seductive appearance of Su Kuexan and could not help but think that it was no wonder that even the Rain Emperor would be head over heels over her. She was indeed a captivating beauty. It was evident how much the Emperor doted on her just from the fact that she could leave the palace with the Black Cloud Army as her guards. If she did not have the Emperor's favor, then, as an imperial consort, how could she so casually leave the imperial palace? "Does this consort Yin have any children?" Ling Han asked casually. "Thankfully, no." The eldest imperial prince shook his head. Otherwise, based on the way the Rain Emperor doted on her, neither himself nor the 3rd imperial prince would need to waste their time to compete for the throne. As they conversed, time passed and they had arrived at the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Right when they had just disembarked from their carriage, they saw a young man approach them and say, "This Sun Ziyan greets your Imperial Highness." Sun Ziyan. A thought flashed through Ling Han's head. He turned to look at this young man. The latter was average in terms of looks, and was quite tall and slender. He should have just stepped into gushing spring tier, as his aura was still not very stable. Spare the niceties, Ziyan. The eldest imperial prince raised his hand slightly, naturally exuding the aura of a ruler. The most powerful and greatest clan in Rain Country was naturally the Qi family, which held control over the political court and had power that spread to all corners of their empire. However, the Sun clan was only slightly beneath the Qi family in status, so Sun Ziyan was not really afraid of the eldest imperial prince. After paying his greetings, he turned to look at Ling Han and said, "Brother Ling, we have finally met." Looks like Sun Ziyan was deliberately waiting for him here. "Sun Ziyan, what do you want?" Lu Yutong asked coldly. As a good female attendant, she naturally had to stand at the front lines. A stunned and envious expression appeared on Sun Ziyan's face. Lu Yutong and Li Sichan were known as the twin pearls of the imperial city, and the number of men that were interested in them was enough to surround the whole imperial city a few times. He himself was also one of the admirers. Unfortunately, it seemed as if these two beautiful flowers were actually plucked by the same man. This was really something that would attract envy, jealousy, and hatred. If Ling Han had any idea of his current thoughts, he would definitely scream out loudly that he was innocent. The gods know that he really hadn't done anything. He was as pure as a little white flower. Sun Ziyan smiled and said, "I only wanted to settle a little conflict between myself and Brother Ling." "Oh, there is such an issue," the eldest imperial prince interrupted. "It's just a little misunderstanding," Sun Ziyan said in an understatement. "Oh." Ling Han's eyes turned cold. "Are you talking about how that father-in-law of yours coveted my two little sisters, and when he did not succeed in tricking and kidnapping them, he sent people to snatch them from me? So that was a misunderstanding. TSK, TSK." Fury flashed through Sun Ziyan's face, but he forced it down and said, "Brother Ling, aren't those two little sisters of yours unscathed and completely unharmed? I am here to represent my father-in-law to offer up an apology, and will also deliver a gift as thanks for accepting our apology. So please forget about this matter, Brother Ling, and not continue doing something that will only damage both sides." The eldest imperial prince nodded and said with a smile, "Since Ziyan is so sincere, why won't Brother Ling give me some face and forgive Ziyan and forget the whole matter?" Lu Yutong looked on with a little worry. She knew Ling Han's personality very well and feared that Ling Han would come into a direct conflict with the eldest imperial prince. Ling Han laughed loudly. When Sun Ziyan and the eldest imperial prince saw this, they both laughed as well, thinking that the misunderstanding was settled. No. Right at this moment, Ling Han suddenly declared, "Cough! Cough!" Both the eldest imperial prince and Sun Ziyan did not manage to get their breath back and broke out into coughs. Their faces were darkened as they looked at Ling Han. "Since you are not agreeing to resolving things peacefully, then why were you laughing so happily?" "Brother Ling, I am being very sincere here." Sun Ziyan's tone deepened considerably as well, a hint of threat underlining his words. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "I am also very sincerely telling you that there is no way that this matter will be resolved peacefully. That old father-in-law of yours is a complete scum, and continuing to allow him to live in this world would only be a waste of food. Brother Ling, are you intending to declare war with the Sun clan with this?" Sun Ziyan asked darkly. "Hee, Ziyan, you are being too harsh in your words, aren't you?" The eldest imperial prince stepped out as mediator. He did not want to first form an enmity with the Sun clan when he had yet to obtain the support that would come with an amiable relationship with Ling Han. Ling Han smiled and asked, "Sun Ziyan, can you really represent the Sun clan? You dare to insult me?" Sun Ziyan glared at him. This guy must have been deliberate, pausing while saying his name in such a way that Sun Zi came first, then followed by Yen. Isn't Sun Zi in your name? So, does that mean calling your name is equivalent to insulting you? What a weird fellow. Ling Han shook his head. It would be all right if you call my name in a normal way, but the way you called my name just now must have been deliberate. Sun Ziyan declared harshly. Ling Han revealed a very innocent expression and asked, "How did I call you just now again?" Sun Ziyan. Sun Ziyan did not suspect anything and repeated his name the way Ling Han had called his name just now. But just after the words left his mouth, he finally realized his blunder and flew into a great rage as he shouted, "Ling Han, you dare to trick me! With an intelligence level like yours, AI." Ling Han shook his head. "You really only deserve to be a grandson. You're looking for death." Sun Ziyan was furious and aimed a harsh punch towards Ling Han. Ting! Lu Yutong stepped out and blocked Sun Ziyan's fist with the hilt of her sword. She said coldly, "Sun Ziyan, don't force me to draw my sword." Sun Ziyan took one step back and looked at Lu Yutong with caution. He was not able to detect her real cultivation level, which made it evident that she had superior cultivation to Hish needed to be extremely cautious when facing her. "Haha, both of you are important subjects of our nation, so please avoid coming into conflict," the eldest imperial prince interrupted, standing between the two of them. The two of them were both members of the 8 great clans. It was all right if it was just a spar, but if there was any loss of life, then even an imperial prince like himself would have to bear the blame. At such an important time in the battle for the throne, even the slightest mistake could cause him to lose all hope of his dreams of inheriting the throne. "When you return, let Chen Yunxiang clean his neck properly, as I will personally send him to the executioner's block," Ling Han said calmly, but there was an extremely determined tone underlining his words. Sun Ziyan regained his composure and asked, "Ling Han, must you do something that will hurt both sides?" "What do you mean by hurting both sides?" Ling Han asked, smiling. Since that is so, then don't blame me for taking action." Sun Ziyan said coldly, "Let me give you a piece of helpful advice. You should be more careful with those stores of yours. The imperial city is too big, so it is unavoidable that some rogues would come to make trouble." Ling Han sighed and said, "Then I would have to eliminate another clan then." His words were spoken very lightly, but the eldest imperial prince had still vaguely heard them, and his expression instantly changed. Chapter 184. Chapter 184. Please go up to the 3rd floor. Eliminate another clan? The Sun Clan. The eldest imperial prince could not help but turn to look at Ling Han. Though he looked very highly upon Ling Han, not even all the alchemists of Rain Country standing behind Ling Han would be able to eliminate the Sun Clan. That was because the 8 great clans were the pillars of support of the nation, and if things really proceeded to that step, then not only would the Rain Emperor take action, even the elder of the Qi family that usually stood behind the scenes would spring out into the open. But from the extremely calm and composed, practically cold look on Ling Han's face, this did not seem like words of anger he had said simply in the heat of the moment. The hidden depths within his eyes even caused an icy feeling to rise up in the heart of the eldest imperial prince. How could that be? He was in the 9th layer of gushing spring tier and had 1 foot into the door of spiritual ocean tier. Moreover, he was the eldest imperial prince of the empire. Yet he would actually feel a bit of fear just from looking at the eyes of a young man. I hope you will not be so foolish." Sun Ziyan did not hear Ling Han's murmur. The flick of his sleeves was proof enough of his extreme displeasure. That was natural. He had thought that he only needed to step out as a mediator, and the conflict between Ling Han and Chen Yunxiang would be resolved with a few words from him. He had not thought that Ling Han would not give him the slightest bit of face. The eldest imperial prince did not speak any more words of advice. Ling Han's words previously were obviously spoken just loud enough for him to be able to hear. If he continued to advise Ling Han, would Ling Han speak even more shocking words and declare his intention to eliminate another clan? Then that would really be considered treason. Sun Zi Yen turned and left. When he arrived at the entrance to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, an old man came up to receive him and said, "Zien, what did that brat say?" It was Chun Yun Xiang. A sliver of displeasure flickered across Sun Ziyan's face. Though he did not care about the lives of a few commoners, he still felt very disgusted with this old man that had that kind of perverted fetish. Still, what could he do? This was his father-in-law, after all. He refused to let it go. He shook his head. Chun Yun Xiang was stunned at first before immediately saying angrily, "This brat actually refused to give face even to you, Zien, just because he has the protection of the princess of the Lu clan." Sun Ziyan humphed. He naturally knew that Chun Yun Xiang was fanning the flames, but he was indeed displeased. Both the eldest and third imperial princes seem to have quite an amiable relation with this brat. It's not as simple as him depending on a woman. What? Chun Yun Xiang instantly broke out into a cold sweat. The Chun clan was only a minor clan, and if he actually attracted the displeasure of such important people like the eldest and third imperial prince, that would mean that the Qin clan could be eliminated at any time. "What are you so afraid of?" Sun Ziyan asked coldly. With Ziyan to protect me, I naturally need not fear anything." Chun Yun Xiang quickly flattered him. Though he was Sun Ziyan's father-in-law, their social status was completely different. Sun Ziyan gave another humph. He turned back around and looked as Ling Han and his group walked up the stairs, an icy smile flickering around the corners of his lips. "Greetings, your Imperial Highness." The guards standing at the entrance of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion were naturally clever people, so when they saw the eldest imperial prince, they quickly hurried forwards and bowed in greeting. Meanwhile, a minor manager immediately came out to receive them as he said, "With the grand arrival of your Imperial Highness, young masters and princesses, our pavilion is honored by your appearance. Please, please." With that minor manager guiding them, they followed him and walked up the staircase. The second and third floors were both comprised of private rooms, but there were only 20 of them available on the third floor. They were reserved for extremely important people such as the current Reign Emperor, the clan heads of the 8 great clans, the 2 headmasters of Huyang Academy, as well as the pavilion master of the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Any other 7, if it was the eldest and third imperial prince, would only be able to settle for a private room on the second floor. Thus, when they arrived on the landing on the second floor, they naturally had to stop climbing the stairs. "Our esteemed guests, your private room awaits you on the third floor," the minor manager said in a strange tone. Everyone's steps paused. Third floor? How could that be possible? If you were talking about the person with the highest status amongst them, then that would definitely be the eldest imperial prince. However, even he did not have the right to go up to the third floor unless he managed to ascend to the imperial throne and become the ruler of this empire. Young Master Han is the most honored guest of our pavilion, and so naturally has the right to go up to the third floor, the minor manager said, respectfully bowing in Ling Han's direction. What? Everyone was dumbstruck. How could that be? What right did his brat, merely 16 or 17 years old and in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, have to go up to the third floor and be on the same level as the clan heads of the 8 great clans, the 2 headmasters of the academy, the boss of alchemy in Rain Country, or even the Rain Emperor? Ling Han glanced cursorily at the minor manager, and the latter only offered him a good-natured smile. He knew that the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, to confirm the origin of the foundation building pills, must have gone to the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion and done their own investigation. They would have found out that the pills were concocted by Ling Han. Those were foundation building pills one was talking about here. Their grade was close to Earth grade pills, and this not only implied that Ling Han was already a black grade high-level alchemist, but that he was practically a confirmed Earth grade alchemist in the near future. Such a person would still not have the right to go up to the third floor. Thanks to young Master Han, I would be able to go up to the third floor now. The eldest imperial prince laughed loudly, though there was a sliver of confusion and envy, as well as astonishment in his eyes. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion was a business, so how could they break their own rules? Since they had prepared a private room on the 3rd floor for Ling Han, that meant that Ling Han had power or background that deserved this kind of priority treatment. This was astonishing to him. What right did Ling Han have to be on the same level as the clan heads of the 8 great clans and the boss of alchemy of Rain Country and other such extremely important people? Sun Zi Yan's expression instantly darkened. He had previously looked down on Ling Han and thought that he was so arrogant because a woman backed him, and now, through some unknown means, he had gotten his hooks into the eldest and 3rd imperial prince. But from the looks of the current scenario, it was obvious he was wrong in his estimation. Not even the eldest imperial prince had the right to enjoy a private room on the 3rd floor. What more to actually obtain one for Ling Han? He was surprised, and Chen Yunxiang was even more dumbstruck. He was so scared that his face had completely paled. Secretly, he was already beginning to regret his utter misfortune and that he would actually encounter such a deadly character like Ling Han. When he looked at Ling Han ascend further up the steps, a complicated expression appeared on Sun Ziyan's face. Should he still continue down his path of darkness and continue to go against Ling Han? It was obvious that the latter's background was very likely astonishingly powerful. When he looked at Chen Yunxiang, he could not help but think of his beautiful and seductive concubine. Then his gaze became even more determined. It was already decided that he would interfere in this matter. Not only was it for the sake of that concubine of his, but also for his own pride. He was a young master of the Sun Clan, and no one should be able to step on his pride. There were only 20 private rooms on the 3rd floor, but each private room was extremely spacious, with capacity to accommodate a few dozen people. Moreover, there were also beautiful female attendants waiting to serve guests within, earnestly serving dishes and filling their cups. Ling Han and the others all sat down, while Hunyao knelt on Ling Han's lap solemnly, her little figure held firmly and strictly. "Young Master Han, is this your sister?" the eldest imperial prince said with a smile. "Something like that," Ling Han said, smiling. He dotingly rubbed Hunyao's head, and a satisfied expression instantly appeared on the little girl's face. Like a kitten, she rubbed her head against Ling Han's chest. The eldest imperial prince observed Hunyao closely for a moment, and could not hold back an expression of shock. He pointed at Hunyao and said in astonishment, She's actually an element gathering tier. This little girl was only about 5 or 6 years old, but was shockingly already in element gathering tier. This was enough to shock anyone to death. Hunyao glared at the eldest imperial prince in displeasure. Ling Han hated being pointed at by someone, and she was heavily influenced by Ling Han, and so naturally had the same dislike. Her little mouth opened wide, revealing her little white teeth, looking like she was ready to bite someone. "Be good, Niao," Ling Han said, smiling. Hunyao instantly withdrew her fierce expression and smiled sweetly at Ling Han. The eldest imperial prince, meanwhile, was stuck in a state of shock and astonishment. How could there be such a young person in element gathering tier? This was too unreal. Indeed, it seems that birds of a feather flock together. Ling Han himself was a monster, so even the people around him were monsters too. Chapter 185. Chapter 185. Bidding for the foundation building pill. My thanks to all our esteemed guests. We are honored by your presence. An old man dressed in an embroidered robe walked up to the auctioneer stage and started tonight's auction. I know very well that there are many here today who have come especially for the foundation building pill. However, there is also a number of other quite good items prepared for the auction today, so I would advise everyone not to dump all your money on simply the foundation building pill. When they heard his words, everyone laughed, and the atmosphere instantly became more relaxed. However, this relaxed state was only temporary. When the foundation building pill appeared, it was guaranteed that all of them would become agitated. One foundation building pill would allow a martial artist who stood at the top of the spiritual ocean tier to build the foundations for his spiritual pedestal and enter a higher cultivation level to become one of the most influential persons in the whole of Rain Country. What person or what clan would not go crazy over it? How many spiritual pedestal tier elites were there in the whole of Rain Country? Even for the 8 great clans and the imperial family, they would only have 2 or 3 spiritual pedestal tier elites that were publicly known to oversee things in their clan. Even if there were a few that played the role of the hidden ace and thus not known publicly, if a clan could have 5 such powerful martial artists in their ranks, it was definitely enough to shock everyone to death. According to rumors, there would be 9 foundation building pills on auction today. If they could all be obtained by a single party, then in the best case scenario, they would be able to allow 9 martial artists at the peak of spiritual ocean tier break through to spiritual pedestal tier. What kind of concept was that? In a single instant, this clan would be able to surpass the 8 great clans. Of course, even after taking the foundation building pill, it was not possible that every person who had swallowed it would be able to successfully break through. But if there was a 50% chance, that would mean there would be 4 or 5 who can successfully break through. If there was only 1/3 of a chance, there would also be at least 3. Anyone who would not go crazy over them must be stupid. So what if alchemical pills were exorbitantly expensive? As long as one was able to enter into spiritual pedestal tier, no matter how much they had to pay for such an alchemical pill, they would be able to earn back easily. Everyone laughed loudly, but all of their eyes had a determined gleam to them tonight. Even if they had to lose their entire family fortune, they would definitely get their hands on a foundation-building pill. Ling Han felt a hidden current in the air and could not help but smile. The foundation-building pills may be able to go for an astronomical price in the auction tonight. That was all thanks to the fact that there were really too few elites of spiritual pedestal tier in Rain Country. If it was in a place where the field of martial arts was prosperous and booming, and there would be as many so-called elites of spiritual pedestal tier as stray dogs, then how little would foundation-building pills be worth? I have never thought that there would be so many people. I was feeling confident at first, and thought that, in the worst-case scenario, I had to at least get 1, or better yet 2. However, now I'm feeling rather uneasy. The chances don't look very good, even for getting only 1. The eldest imperial prince, shaking his head. Ling Han smiled and said, "Your Imperial Highness has yet to step into spiritual ocean tier, and there is at least another 5 years until the time when you would need to attempt breaking through to spiritual pedestal tier. Who knows, there may be new foundation-building pills again by then." The eldest imperial prince sighed and said, "Young Master Han may not be aware, as you have just arrived in the imperial city. However, at least as far as I can remember, never have alchemical pills that could aid one in breaking through appeared. Setting aside such high-grade alchemical pills like the foundation-building pill, even the purple cloud pill, which is used to help to break through to gushing spring tier, is extremely rare." Ling Han instantly put on a strange expression. The main ingredient of that purple cloud pill was the dark moon grass, which could be used to help widen the space in one's dantian. Even ultimate warriors of heaven tier would be moved by such a chance, so how could it not be rare? I don't know who has supplied these 9 foundation-building pills tonight, but that person would definitely be making a killing, the eldest imperial prince said a little enviously. The imperial family was extremely wealthy, but the eldest imperial prince was still envious. It was obvious that he thought these 9 foundation-building pills would be able to go for an astronomical amount that would cause even one such as him to lose control. Lu Yutong and Li Sichan both turned their beautiful eyes to look at Ling Han. The fellow who would be making a killing tonight was precisely this laid-back, relaxed young man right over here. And the person mentioned did not even look like he was taking this seriously at all. However, the foundation-building pills are very close to Earth-grade. Even if they were concocted by an Earth-grade alchemist, chances for failure are still very high. In my opinion, at least about 20 or 30 furnaces worth of ingredients would explode before successfully concocting these 9 foundation-building pills. Going by this, although there is still profit to be earned, it is within reasonable limits, the eldest imperial prince said in a very certain tone, changing the direction of the conversation. He turned around and saw Ling Han and his 2 female companions had rather strange expressions. He could not help but feel surprised and asked, "What is the matter with you all?" Both Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were trying to hold back their laughter. It was really a tough job. Ling Han was that person who had concocted these 9 foundation-building pills. Moreover, he did it in one go. Additionally, one furnace should have only been able to produce 8 pills, but he, with an amazing purification technique of his own, produced 9 pills in the end. The pill completion rate had practically exceeded 100%. Yu, with such a solemn, sure tone, declared that at least 20 or 30 furnaces had to explode before being able to concoct these 9 pills. How could this not cause them to want to laugh uproariously? Of course, these 2 girls were very reserved and still gave face to the eldest imperial prince. Thus, through extreme willpower, they held back their laughter. However, this also caused their expressions to naturally become very strange. Ling Han laughed and asked, "How much money has your Imperial Highness brought today?" 20 million. What a wealthy man. Ling Han did not mind giving him such praise in the slightest, because this money would very quickly enter into his pocket. Everyone would naturally love someone who would be delivering money to them. "Oh, it's nothing." The eldest imperial prince pretended to be very modest. In fact, this wealth was practically all his savings. After all, he was merely an imperial prince now. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both shook their heads, thinking, "Your Imperial Highness, you're still pretending to be modest, but you don't know that this guy has already started considering all that money of yours as his." Everyone, the 9 foundation-building pills will be auctioned off separately throughout the entire auction, so please do not walk away and miss out on it. After the combined appraisal by a few alchemists of the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion hired by our pavilion, these 9 foundation-building pills are worth 13 stars. All of you should know what a grade of 13 stars implies, right? The auctioneer said with a smile. Clapping his hands, he continued, "And now, to start off the auction, we'll be auctioning off the first foundation-building pill to liven up the atmosphere. The base price is 5 million, and every bid cannot be lower than 100,000. After he finished speaking, those rich and imposing people did not look very pleased, while those who were embarrassingly short of money smiled. If these 9 foundation-building pills were auctioned off in one go, then there would definitely be very few people able to afford them, so in the end, the price would not be too shocking. However, if they were auctioned off one by one, the competition would become much fiercer, and in extreme conditions, one foundation-building pill may go for a price that even exceeded the price of the other 8 pills combined. Thus, those rich people were naturally displeased, as this had added a larger number of bidders they had to compete with for a single pill. 5 million. 5,500,000. 5,700,000. Very quickly, the sound of bids endlessly appeared. That was because it was acknowledged by all that a foundation-building pill was worth about 10 million. Thus, everyone was still very enthusiastically bidding, and the price was still very far from the limits they had set in their hearts. The eldest imperial prince also began to place bids. Unfortunately, his status was completely useless in the current scenario. No one would be retreating simply because he was the one bidding. 10 million. Within only 2 minutes, the price of first foundation-building pill had reached 10 million. From this moment on, there were obviously fewer bidders because this was very near to the real value of the foundation-building pills. Moreover, there were still 8 left, so they need not compete so desperately yet. After a few more rounds of bidding, the first foundation building pill was finally auctioned off for 13 million. The winning bidder was an old man from the Lee clan of the 8 great clans. His cultivation level was at the peak of the spiritual ocean tier, and it was obvious from the delight on his face that he had bought it for his own use. If he was fortunate when he went into seclusion, he would come out as an elite of spiritual pedestal tier. Spiritual ocean and spiritual pedestal tiers were 2 completely different levels. Your Imperial Highness, if you intend to buy the foundation building pills, it would be best if you act soon. In my opinion, the more things drag on, the higher the price would be, Ling Han said to the eldest Imperial Prince. The rarer something is, the greater its value. Chapter 186. Chapter 186. Swift Cloud Talisman. The auction continued. Following right after were a couple of paintings and calligraphy works, as well as some ornaments. They were not really important for martial artists, but could be used as a way to refresh the mind and a source of amusement. Besides these, there were also some martial arts and cultivation techniques. However, these tended to be too low in grade, and so did not get a very good price. After about half an hour, bidding began for the second foundation building pill. The atmosphere immediately became fired up, and not only did the bid very quickly exceed 10 million, the final price was fixed at 15 million, almost 50% higher than the first pill. The expression on the eldest Imperial Prince's face turned a bit ugly. If things went on in this manner, then it was really possible that he may not be able to buy even one foundation building pill. He thus secretly made his decision. He would try his absolute best to get the third foundation building pill. When Ling Han saw this, he could not help but shake his head. He believed that, with the accumulated emotions from the earlier 2 rounds of bidding, the third foundation building pill would definitely go for an astronomical price and become a minor climax of this auction. Everyone, the next auction item are these 3 swift cloud talismans. The auctioneer drank a sip of water to moisten his throat and once again began to announce loudly, "These are 3 swift cloud talismans. If one attaches onto their body, it will increase their speed by 10 times at most, and the effects would last for about 10 minutes. His eyes swept over the surrounding people. According to the estimation of the appraiser of our pavilion, the higher your cultivation level, the less the speed increase would be. A martial artist in spiritual pedestal tier would be able to increase their speed by only about 2 times, while a martial artist in element gathering tier can increase their speed by 10 times. It has no effect on one in flower blossoming tier. A martial artist in flower blossoming tier could soar to the skies, so it was natural that there would be no effect. And the higher one's cultivation level, the faster one would be, so it was natural that the lesser the speed increase would be. This was understandable. Ling Han could not help but become interested and sat up straight. This, however, made Hunyo very displeased because she had to change her position on his lap. Spirit talismans could be taken as a different kind of spirit tool, as they were also similarly engraved with the martial intent of a martial artist. However, the material used to sustain the martial intent was a one-use item. Once a talisman was attached to one's body, it would begin working, and this was an irreversible, unstoppable process. Even if you used it for only a short while, its effects would end only once the talisman had been completely expended. However, spirit talismans were far harder to create than normal spirit tools, because unlike spirit tools that needed the user's own origin power to activate them and would not be activated if the user did not have enough origin power, spirit talismans did not have this problem. Once it was attached to your body, its effects would definitely be activated without exception. Of course, some spirit talismans that were too dominating and, with the installation of a terrifying amount of power into the user's body, could actually shatter the user's body, were nothing too rare either. These 3 spirit talismans, he decided he wanted them. Firstly, he could study the martial intent of these spirit talismans, and secondly, they could give him a speed burst of 10 times his usual speed. This, for the current him, was very significant, and may even save his life in the future. For Ling Han, as long as he was alive, he would be able to perform miracles, and would be able to get his own back. The 3 swift cloud talismans will be auctioned off all at once. The base price is 5 million, the auctioneer announced. The base price of 5 million was enough to compare to the base price of a foundation building pill, and it was obvious that in the eyes of the Spirit Treasure Pavilion, they were also an extremely rare, precious item. The reason why they were not left till the end of the auction was most likely because the pavilion feared that everyone would spend all their money on the foundation building pills. 5,100,000. Someone placed a bid, but the increase in price was not very high. In the Imperial City, who dared to commit murder? Thus, the price of the Swift Cloud Talismans was far below their estimated price. After all, members of the great clans need not go out and risk their lives and would still be able to get enough resources for cultivation, while those who came from a commoner background would not be able to produce 5 million. 5,200,000. 5,300,000. The bidding went very slowly and could not be compared to the earlier fiery bidding for the foundation building pill at all. 10 million. Right at this moment, a lazy voice was heard, yet it was practically earth-shattering, causing a numbness to everyone's hearts. What profligate young master was this that he would spend his money in this way? He's really trying to bring ruin to his father. Everyone turned their eyes to the private room on the 3rd floor. Quite a number of people looked surprised, because they had heard the eldest imperial prince's voice earlier on from there. This was still understandable. Who knows? Perhaps the Spirit Treasures Pavilion thought that the eldest imperial prince had the highest chances to inherit the throne, and so gave him a private room on the 3rd floor. But now this voice was not familiar at all, so who could it be? Who was it that not only could sit in a private room on the 3rd floor, but could also spare such a shocking amount of money on his first bid? Sun Ziyan's eyes instantly narrowed. He naturally recognized that it was Ling Han's voice. This brat actually had so much money. True, if he did not have so much money, how could he be able to open up so many stores and compete with the Qin clan, even at a loss? There is now a chance for you to save the business of your clan, he said to Qin Yunxiang. The old man considered slightly, then quickly understood, and said, Ziyan, you mean I should compete in bidding with him and force him to spend more money? That's right. The 2 of you are now competing, and if that brat spends an extra million, that would mean you would earn an extra million, Sun Ziyan said coldly. All right. Qin Yunxiang gritted his teeth. I will go full force ahead today and fight to the end with that bastard. 11 million, he called out loudly. Hiss! The surroundings erupted in a clamor. 11 million was not the highest price today, but to spend so much money for 3 talismans that did not have much use, wasn't that a bit idiotic? Is it that old dog? Ling Han murmured. He naturally recognized Qin Yunxiang's voice. Then let me scare you to death. He raised his voice and called out, 20 million. Pooh! Everyone choked. This was already not just a spoilt young master bringing ruin to his father. It was practically deranged enough to bring ruin to his ancestors. Not even the 8 great clans could afford to have such a character that would spend money like this, right? Young Master Han, do you really have so much money? The eldest imperial prince asked curiously, though he knew that Ling Han could have a very powerful background. He did not think that the former could really produce such an exorbitant sum of money as 20 million so easily. That's all right. Doesn't your Imperial Highness have 20 million with you? Ling Han asked jokingly. The eldest imperial prince almost jumped up from his seat. This brat actually had his eye on his money, though he did want to gain Ling Han's support. But if you were talking about simply giving him such an astronomical sum of money of 20 million, even he would break out in a cold sweat. Moreover, if he spent the 20 million on those 3 pieces of scrap paper, how was he going to bid for his foundation building pill? Young Master Han, don't joke around, he said, rubbing off the cold sweat from his forehead. Ling Han laughed, but did not explain, causing both Liu Tong and Li Xichan to cover their mouths and laugh softly. This brat had merely concocted alchemical pills at the Heavens Medicine Pavilion and had already collected 18 million in the form of observation fees. Moreover, he was the one who had concocted the foundation-building pills, and their combined price would definitely total up to over 100 million. 20 million was merely a drop in the ocean. In a private room on the second floor, Sun Ziyan smirked coldly and said, "See, in just a few moments, you have earned 20 million. Raise your bid. Continue the bidding." Meanwhile, Chun Yunxiang had erupted into a cold sweat. From that uncaring tone of Ling Han, it was as if 20 million was pocket change to him. But for the Chen clan, although 20 million was not an overwhelmingly large amount of money, they really did not have so much cash. They would have to sell off some of their property to get that amount of cash. If he continued to bid, he was really afraid that his heart would not be able to take the continuous shocks. But when he thought about Ling Han's forceful attitude, Qin Yun Xiang gritted his teeth and declared 21 million. At this, everyone finally understood. He was deliberately raising the bid. Chapter 187. Chapter 187. Credit limit of 1 billion. The eldest imperial prince breathed out a gasp of relief. The other bidder had finally raised the bid, and now his 20 million was safe. Ling Han laughed and said, "Old dog, if I suddenly changed my mind and decided not to continue bidding now, would you instantly faint from the shock?" "Hung, that is only a mere 20 million. It's not a big enough sum of money yet that I would consider it seriously." In such a public setting, there was no way that Chan Yun Xiang would abandon his face and cower, so he instantly calmed his heart and countered in a steady tone. "This esteemed guest of the third floor, are you going to make a bid?" "If you are not, then please do not interrupt," the auctioneer reminded. "Of course I am. Money is merely an earthly possession." Ling Han smiled. 30 million. Pooh! The eldest imperial prince had just taken a sip of tea to calm himself down from such a scare, but when he heard the bid of 30 million, he instantly spat out the mouthful he had just drank. Thankfully, he managed to turn his head in the nick of time. Otherwise, if he had actually spat out the mouthful of tea on the female attendant waiting on him, then his reputation would really be completely ruined. Cough, cough, cough. He coughed uncontrollably, his whole face completely red, and said, "Young Master Han, did you just make a bid of 30 million? "That's right. I assumed that with the wealth of your Imperial Highness, a loan of 30 million would simply be a light drizzle to you," Ling Han said, laughing. "Drizzle your sister. That was 30 million silver coins we're talking about here, not 30 million drops of rain." "Young Master Han, are you trying to kill me?" the eldest imperial prince asked grudgingly. If Ling Han was not able to produce that sum of money, would this debt fall on his head? That was very possible, since they were in the same private room. 30 million, just the thought of it caused the eldest imperial prince's face to turn black. He would be able to earn only 10 million after 5 years. Ling Han smiled but did not explain. In the private room on the second floor, Sun Ziyan laughed loudly and said, "This spoilt profligate master, how idiotic! He has simply dumped 30 million into the water, just like that. Ha 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 ha. Come, continue the bidding." Chun Yun Xiang also looked at Sun Ziyan with hidden bitterness in his eyes. "One word from you, and I have to increase the bid." That was 30 million here. If Ling Han really decided not to continue bidding, then he would have to sell off at least 1/3 of the properties under the Chen clan's ownership. By that time, he would be even less able to sustain Ling Han's malicious, low-price competition. 31 million. Chun Yun Xiang said through gritted teeth. After making this bid, he could feel his heart was beating unusually fast, as if it was about to jump out of his throat. He had been alive for so many years, but had never spent 30 million in one go like this. No, he had never even spent 10 million in one go like this. Such a sum caused all the blood to rush to his head, and his face was completely red. It was possible that his head would explode at any moment. The eldest imperial prince, once again, let out a breath in relief. When he stretched out a hand to rub his forehead, there was actually cold sweat on his forehead. 30 million, not just him, maybe even the current Reign Emperor would have to consider seriously before spending such a sum of money. It was great that there was an idiot who decided to pick up the baton. He stared at Ling Han and decided that if Ling Han showed any hint of continuing to bid, he would act to stop the latter. Ling Han smiled. If he decided to stop bidding now, Chen Yunxiang would definitely one die. This was a very good opportunity to destroy the Chen clan, but Ling Han did not want to miss out on those 3 swift cloud talismans because of this. 40 million! As swift as a sudden clap of thunder which leaves no time for covering one's ears, he made a new bid. With a paw, the chair under the eldest imperial prince's backside actually shattered. This was because he was too agitated and lost control of his origin power that slipped out of his body. The loss of control over his origin power actually shattered a chair made of high-grade sandalwood. Young Master Han, your joke is too much. The eldest imperial prince shook his head. He was definitely unable to produce an astronomical sum of 40 million. Thus, if the Spirit Treasures Pavilion came forward forcefully to ask for their payment, he would only be able to draw a clear line between himself and Ling Han. Anyways, it was Ling Han who had made the bids, so of course the money should come from him. He was feeling on edge here, while over there, Chen Yunxiang naturally gasped out in relief. This time round, he was not going to increase the bid anymore, no matter what. When Sun Zian saw this, a cold smile curled up the corners of his lips, and he said, "Mister, I'd like to ask, if one who had made a bid cannot produce the payment, how would the issue be handled?" Naturally, according to the rules of our pavilion, the offender would have his cultivation completely crippled, and not be allowed to step into the Spirit Treasures Pavilion forever, the auctioneer immediately replied. Good. Sun Zian humphed coldly and said, I suspect that honored guest on the 3rd floor is unable to produce this sum of money, and has been engaging us in a malicious price war all this while. N. The auctioneer's eyes grew grim. Since young Master's son has spoken such doubts, then let me go to confirm. He turned around and left, walking into the backstage area. The face of the eldest imperial prince instantly darkened. If they were chased out of here because of involvement in a malicious price war, what would be left of his reputation? Wait, this brat could not have purposely done it, right? Purposely causing public shame to him and helping his 3rd younger brother to clear all the obstacles in his path. He had just barely finished that thought when he saw that the auctioneer had returned. The latter said, I have just confirmed with one of the senior officials of our pavilion that esteemed guest is definitely able to produce 40 million. Additionally, even if that esteemed guest does not have a single copper coin on him, our pavilion is willing to give him a credit limit of 1 billion. Pooh, 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 pooh. Everyone choked and began to cough uncontrollably. A credit limit of 1 billion. What kind of concept was that? Ling Han did not have to spend a single cent and would be able to simply take home an auction item worth 1 billion, as the Spirit Treasures Pavilion would advance funds for him first. Such an honor. Would even the clan heads of the 8 great clans be able to enjoy this honor? The eldest imperial prince was gaping widely in shock, a powerful astonishment in his eyes. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion looked too highly on Ling Han, didn't they? They not only gave him the use of a private room on the 3rd floor, but even gave him a credit limit of 1 billion. When he thought about it, even he felt extreme envy at such priority treatment. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, Since my wealth is confirmed, then to be fair, your wealth should be confirmed as well. I am also suspicious whether you two are really poor and simply engaging me in a malicious price war. When these words were heard, Sun Ziyan and Chen Yunxiang's expressions instantly changed. They were definitely unable to produce 30 million in cash. I am a member of the Sun clan. So, how could it be possible that I would not be able to produce a mere 30 million? Sun Ziyan said very forcefully. If these words were spoken by the clan head of the Sun clan, that's fine. But for a mere junior of the clan, being able to produce 3 million would already be impressive enough. Someone laughed mockingly. It was, of course, one of Sun Ziyan's rivals. That's right. It must be investigated. Otherwise, it would not be fair. Another person joined in on the excitement. A young and quick-tempered person like Sun Ziyan would have naturally made quite a few enemies. However, most of them would waver in the face of the power of each other's respective clans and not push the issue. Thus, at this time, there were of course people ready to hit him when he was down. Please cooperate, young master Sun, the auctioneer said. Since Ling Han's wealth was confirmed, then it was natural that Sun Ziyan and Chen Yunxiang had to be investigated as well. Otherwise, it would not be fair. The most important thing in the auction was to be fair, and what everyone hated the most was a malicious price war. Immediately, someone from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion entered into the private room of Sun Ziyan and Chen Yunxiang. After a while, the auctioneer said, "From the results of our investigation, the total sum of cash that young Master Sun and old Master Qin can pay is 9 million, which is very far from their bid of 30 million. When these words were heard, quite a number of people smirked coldly. If they were not elites of spiritual ocean tier and had come specifically for the foundation building pills, who would actually have more than 10 million on them. This time, Sun Ziyan had really ruined his whole reputation. Sun Ziyan and Chen Yunxiang were immediately cast out of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, because it was Chen Yunxiang who had made the bids, and he did not have any form of cultivation at all. There was no cultivation to be crippled. However, there was no way that the two of them would be allowed to enter into the Spirit Treasures Pavilion again for the rest of their lives. Chapter 188. Chapter 188. Sky-high price. Because there was a malicious price war involved, the previous bidding was naturally discarded. Ling Han once again made a bid, and managed to easily purchase the 3 swift cloud talismans at 10 million. Practically no one made a counterbid, because they were all aware of Ling Han's wealth. He did not even blink, and simply threw out a bid of 40 million like that, and what was even more terrifying was his credit limit of 1 billion. If anyone actually offended him, then when something that they wanted came up in the auction, and Ling Han actually joined in on the bidding, who would be able to compete? Very soon, a representative from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion delivered the 3 swift cloud talismans over. As for money, he naturally had no need to pay. No, it would be the Spirit Treasures Pavilion who would be giving Ling Han money. The eldest imperial prince was both astonished and curious. Where had Ling Han gotten so much money from, and how had he gotten such serious attention from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion? He had naturally done his own investigation on Ling Han's background. Aside from that short time period shortly after his birth, this guy was a complete village boy. In the bounds of the imperial city, the Ling clan did not even qualify as an actual clan. But Ling Han suddenly rose up, and his rise took more or less only about half a year. This was really a miracle that no one could see through it all. The auction continued. After a few unremarkable small items, the 3rd foundation building pill finally appeared on the stage in a glorious display. The eldest imperial prince finally decided to throw everything into the gamble this time round. However, there were many others who had the same thought as him, and very quickly the bidding price of the alchemical pill was pushed up to the high price of 20 million. The eldest imperial prince could only stare and secretly regret how he had not decisively acted the previous 2 times. And now he couldn't even get 1 pill with his 20 million. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion seemed to practically sell anything one could think of. Not just alchemical pills and decorative items, they also sold various ingredients, cultivation techniques, and martial arts techniques. There were even treasure maps mixed in. However, there were no spirit tools up for auction this time round. Otherwise, Ling Han would really want to get one of his own. Because the martial arts and cultivation techniques that were on auction were really too low grade, Ling Han naturally did not have the slightest interest. He was practically nodding off where he was sitting. Anyways, he needed not buy the foundation building pills at all. The 4th pill, the 5th pill, and the 6th pill were quickly auctioned off. As the number of foundation building pills became less and less, the price became higher and higher. The 8th pill was even auctioned off for the astronomical price of 28 million. That was more than double the price of the first pill. This caused that elite of spiritual ocean tier from the Li clan to delightedly laugh for quite some time, though the price of 13 million caused him to feel heartache earlier on. When compared with the current price, he was naturally happy to have bought it for only that much. There was only one pill left. Without a doubt, the final bid of this last foundation building pill would definitely break through the price of 30 million. Gods know when there would be new foundation building pills again. 20 million. True enough, the base price of 5 million had just been announced when someone immediately placed the high bid of 20 million. It was natural that the last pill would be worth more than 20 million, so what was the point of wasting their time making small bids of less than 20 million? Ling Han could not help but clap his hands and said, "I like that kind of person, very straightforward." Lu Yutong and Li Sichan both covered their mouths and laughed lightly. Who would not like someone who would be delivering money to him? Meanwhile, the eldest imperial prince was slightly confused. He thought that Ling Han himself was a straightforward person and so admired that kind of person as well, and could not help but ask himself honestly if he were a straightforward person. If he was not, would it be very difficult for him to befriend Ling Han then? 25 million. There was quite a number of people with straightforward characters. Another immediately added another 5 million to the bid. 26 million, 27 million, 28 million, 29 million. It was as if the price of 30 million was a new level. After the last bid was shouted out, a silence fell on the crowd. For the moment, none made another bid. The publicly acknowledged price of the foundation building pill was at around 10 million. But because there was no shortage of buyers and no one actually willing to sell it, the astronomical price of over 20 million naturally came about. However, no one's money came falling down from the skies, so they naturally could not simply spend excessively. Moreover, aside from alchemists, who could actually produce a massive amount of over 10 million, such an amount would definitely have been the collective savings of a party. So how could it be spent so thoughtlessly? The majority of time of martial artists was spent on cultivation, so where would they have the time to earn money? For example, in the Ling clan, there was a few hundred people working in businesses and earning money to support the few dozens of people in the clan who could ascend up the path of martial arts and would thus be able to protect the wealth of the Ling clan. It was precisely because they were spending the money of their clans or parties that it was unavoidable that they would hesitate, considering carefully whether or not they should spend such an astronomical sum. 30 million. Finally, someone broke the silence. It was an elite of spiritual ocean tier from a middle-class clan. For the 8 great clans, one more spiritual pedestal tier elite would equate to an additional source of peak military power and was very significant. However, it was not to the extent that there would be any real solid change to their power base. However, for a middle-class clan, if there was a spiritual pedestal tier elite in their ranks, that would definitely mean a complete transformation and allow the clan to be on a completely different level than previously. Thus, middle-class clans were more desperate to get the foundation building pill and were also ready to go to crazier lengths for it. 41 million, 42 million, 43 million. Finally, only 3 clans were left. The eyes of the representatives from these clans were all red, and they completely looked like they were ready to throw everything away and spare no expenses just to get their hands on the final foundation-building pill. Even after swallowing the foundation-building pill, you would only have about 10 to 20% chance to break through. Why do the two of you have to compete so ferociously with me? One of them asked. Then, why won't Brother Ma allow me to have this chance? Another asked. This is a foundation-building pill worth 13 stars. It's not just a 10 to 20% chance, but is close to 30%. The third person humphed coldly. If you can't afford to make a bid, then don't embarrass yourself. Then let's continue. Finally, the price was fixed at 49 million. Everyone had already guessed that the last foundation-building pill would definitely get the highest price. But the price that almost reached 50 million still caused everyone to be dumbstruck. That was how an auction was like. There was no need for too many rich people as long as there were at least two parties willing to place bids. That would be enough. Just like how Ling Han and Chen Yunxiang placed competing bids for the Swift Cloud talismans, when it caused the price to soar all the way up to 40 million. It was only the fact that Chen Yunxiang was not able to produce so much cash that the earlier bidding was rendered void. Ling Han calculated for a moment and could not help but feel a slight shock himself, because the 9 foundation-building pills altogether were auctioned off for a price of 225 million. Even after the service charge of 14% was deducted, that would also be almost double the price of directly selling off one pill for 10 million. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan also calculated it and were shocked as well. Such an astronomical number was enough to compare to the annual total income of a great clan. Total income, not total profit. In other words, Ling Han had earned more than the accumulated earnings of a great clan for 1 year in this single day. Alchemists really earned too much money, but that would depend on the person as well. Aside from Ling Han, what other alchemist could concoct these 9 foundation-building pills without having exploded a few dozen furnaces first? And if it was an Earth-grade alchemist, did an Earth-grade alchemist still need such an earthly item like money? If an Earth-grade alchemist actually concocted an Earth-grade middle-level or even high-level treasured pill, then even selling off the whole Rain Country would not be enough. The auction this time round ended smoothly, and Ling Han went to the backstage to settle his bill. The eldest imperial prince naturally thought he had gone to pay the money for his 3 Swift Cloud talismans, and would have never imagined that Ling Han had gone to receive his money. Moreover, the sum that he was receiving was enough to cause even an imperial prince like him to stop breathing. Young Master Han, the 9 foundation-building pills have been auctioned off for a total of 225 million, and subtracting the 14% service charge, as well as the 10 million that you have withdrawn in advance earlier on, there's still 183,500,000 left. Jia Boyun handed over a stack of monetary notes to Ling Han. So much money naturally could not possibly be paid in gold. He already knew that Ling Han was about to become a black-grade high-level alchemist, and could even possibly step into Earth-grade, and so he used a respectful address for him, hoping that Ling Han could concoct an Earth-grade pill that could help a spiritual pedestal-tier elite to break through. Otherwise, with his status, there was no need for him to be so respectful to this extent. Ling Han smiled and received the money from him. He did not even spare it a second look and simply put it away. He knew that the other would not dare to embezzle his money. Chapter 189. Chapter 189. Contemplating the 10th nucleus. As the auction ended, everyone naturally returned home. Those who had managed to buy items they liked were naturally happy, while those who had not went home sighing and shaking their heads. Ling Han, meanwhile, was the biggest winner of today, having received a massive wealth of close to 200 million. If this news was actually spread out, then there may actually be people who attempted to rob him on his way back. If they actually managed to succeed, there would be no need to worry about money for the rest of their lives. Thankfully, there did not appear any such blind people. When he returned to Huyang Academy, Ling Han went to bed. There was not much difference between 100 or 200 million and scrap paper in his eyes, so there was no need for him to keep counting his money like some kind of miser. Early the next morning, he naturally woke up to cultivate as per usual. His advancement rate was too fast by now. He had just broken through to the 9th layer of element gathering tier 2 days ago, yet now he was already close to the late period of the 9th layer. There was only one more step left, and he would be in the peak period, ready to attempt breaking through to gushing spring tier. Should I try out that? Ling Han pondered after he was done cultivating. In his last life, he had ventured into a considerable number of historical sites and had naturally managed to obtain quite a number of cultivation and martial arts techniques, as well as a few personal letters that he suspected had been written by an elite of shattering void tier. There was a certain possibility mentioned in these letters. 10th layer of element gathering tier. 9 was the utmost number of this world, so 9 was considered the top of everything in this world. The king of yesterday and tomorrow referred to the emperors of the mortal world. It was the same in the field of martial arts, whether it was from body refining tier or all the way to heaven tier. The 9th layer was considered the top level that one could aspire to. And from body refining to heaven tier, there were also actually 9 tiers. The last shattering void tier would break one's mortal shackles, and was the step that would allow one to shatter the void to become a god. It was a bridge that connected to the other shore, and could be considered as the evasive one. However, there was an ancient almighty character that had mentioned that, in fact, one could actually still cultivate to the extreme layer in every tier until perfection. The notes that Ling Han had obtained only mentioned that it was possible to form the 10th origin nucleus in element gathering tier, break the limit of 9, and catch the evasive one and really obtain perfection. The benefits of such a thing were endless. One had to understand that after element gathering tier, what lay ahead was gushing spring tier, and in this tier, the martial artist would transform the origin nuclei he had into springs that gushed out origin power in his dantian. After gushing spring tier was spiritual ocean tier, which was to transform these springs into endless oceans of origin power. Spiritual pedestal, flower blossoming, spiritual infant, deity transformation, all the subsequent tiers were closely related to this. From this aspect, the element gathering tier was actually the foundation of one's path of martial arts and had far-reaching consequences. Body refining tier was only to refine one's blood and flesh, bones and tendons, while only in element gathering would one open up his dantian and could finally be considered as having officially stepped onto the path of a cultivator. As a result, to be able to reach the ultimate limits of a mortal body in element gathering tier and reach perfection would have benefits that would last for the rest of one's lifetime. The problem here was that ancient almighty person had only mentioned that it was theoretically possible, but had not managed to accomplish it himself. It was because he had returned to consider this issue only after he had reached a very high cultivation level. However, time was irreversible, so he could not possibly return to element gathering tier to once again begin cultivating. There was a large lapse in the history of the martial arts of this land, and there was also a large number of alchemical pill formulae that had been lost in the passage of time. It was likely that some unknown massive catastrophe happened in the era of that almighty person. Anyways, his theory had never been spread out and known by others, not to mention attempted. It was thus lost in the pages of history until the notes came to be discovered by Ling Han. For the Ling Han of that time, these notes naturally did not have much use. However, who would have thought that his body would have been shattered by the Black Tower, and his soul, after 10,000 years, would be reborn in the body of a young man, which gave him an opportunity to start again from the beginning? It seems like, in a mysterious way, this was destined. Ling Han pinched his chin, obviously a bit hesitant. Forming the 10th nucleus was nothing to play around with. 9 was the ultimate limit and was an absolute balance. However, if he decided to push in by force the 10th nucleus, that would undoubtedly shatter this delicate balance and could possibly lead to a terrible disaster. Otherwise, after so many generations of elites and geniuses, why had no one ever thought of the possibility of 10 nuclei or even 20? This naturally showed how difficult it was to actually take this step, or perhaps even how impossible a feat it seemed. Forget it. L reached the peak period of the 9th layer, then consider it again. Ling Han shook his head and did not continue to waste his time pondering this issue. By afternoon, he received a piece of good news and a piece of bad news. The good news was that Mo Gao had come out of seclusion and had successfully ascended to Gushing Spring Tier. Teacher Mo, congratulations for breaking through. Ling Han sensed a powerful wave of origin power and immediately rushed over to Mo Gao's courtyard. True enough, he very quickly saw Mo Gao walk out of his house. Though he looked a little disheveled, his essence, energy, and spirit were shockingly strong. Ha 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 ha. After 10+ years of delay, I finally broke through, Mo Gao said a bit ruefully. I believe that with Teacher Mo's intent focus on the art of the sword, you will be able to easily break through the obstacles on your path of martial arts and enter into an even higher cultivation level, Ling Han said, smiling. This was not an exaggeration on his part. With a sword heart that was almost formed, Mo Gao's path of cultivation would definitely be smooth and easy from this point onwards. As the saying goes, a great talent matures slowly, and Mo Gao would definitely experience a huge burst. Mo Gao smiled faintly. As a martial artist, how could he not desire to ascend to a higher cultivation level? It was just that when compared with advancement in cultivation level, he was more passionate about the art of the sword. Now that his sword heart was forming and his cultivation level was also raised, he had nothing to be displeased about. Your cultivation! Mo Gao's expression suddenly changed, and he pointed at Ling Han, shock filling his features. 9th layer of element gathering tier. He suddenly had a feeling like he was about to faint. When Ling Han had just come here, he was only in the 5th layer of element gathering, and just how much time had passed? Just barely a month, and this guy was already in the 9th layer of element gathering now. Most likely, it would not be too long before Ling Han would be able to catch up to, and even surpass him. What a monster! Ling Han nodded and said, the advancement in cultivation level is indeed a bit slow. He sighed. Poser. Even with his training in sword heart, Mo Gao could not help but want to curse. This brat was really too much of a poser. Get lost, he said irritatedly. Ling Han laughed loudly, and left Mo Gao had just broken through, so he needed some time to stabilize his position in the cultivation level. The bad news, meanwhile, was brought by Lu Yutong. Actually, this piece of news was expected, though it had come a bit later than he had predicted. Those clothing shops that Ling Han had opened had all been robbed or damaged the night before. Now, the doors were broken open, the clothes were either robbed or torn to pieces. Not one of them was in a state to reopen. Obviously, this was the beginning of the counterattack by Chen Yinxiang or perhaps Sun Ziyan. Since the peaceful resolution had failed the day before, they had immediately started to act the night before. Most probably, they had used the power of the earth and water faction. After all, it was very easy for those hooligans to do this kind of job. Now, what do we do? Lu Yutong asked Ling Han. Since the opponent is not willing to follow the rules, then we can also only resort to force. Ling Han smiled faintly. Lu Yutong was stunned and said, You want to charge to the Qin clan? You can't. Sun Ziyan must have guessed that you would do so. The Qin clan would definitely be heavily guarded today, and there may even be Imperial guards present. If you actually come to blows with the Imperial guards, no one would be able to save you. The Imperial guards represented the Imperial family, so there was no difference between coming to blows with the Imperial guards and committing treason. Ling Han grinned, then said, Since that grandson wants to play, then let's just join him in his game. Anyways, I'm quite free right now. Let's go to the Earth and Water faction first, and first deal with this group of lackeys. Lu Yutong was even dizzier at this and said, the faction leader of the Earth and Water faction, Yang Tiandu, is in the spiritual ocean tier. And so we have to go to the Heaven Military Hall first, Ling Han said with a smile. Chapter 190. Chapter 190. For sale. There were many lone cultivators in Rain Country, and they did not have any party behind them to support them. However, cultivation was a very expensive venture, so then, where did they get their money from? Naturally, through working for others. For example, they may choose to serve as guards for traveling merchants or collect bounties after killing some villainous characters or gather ingredients that their employer acquired. As time passed, there was a place and organization that was specifically formed for lone cultivators to get missions, and that was the Heaven Military Hall. Anyone could enter the Heaven Military Hall. One only had to register his personal information, and would be then able to obtain missions and begin his way to earn money. Of course, the Heaven Military Hall was even more welcoming of the wealthy to post missions here. It was a bit like the auctioneer's house. After a mission had been completed, the Heaven Military Hall would collect a portion of the rewards as fee for their service. Lone cultivators, as their name suggested, usually moved alone and were thus like a sheet of loose sand. However, if they actually managed to cooperate with each other, they would become a party that should not be taken lightly. Thus, in the process of the formation of the Heaven Military Hall, there was also involvement of the imperial family. They were not only able to take a share of the profits, they also sent out a large amount of manpower as surveillance to avoid someone secretly gathering these lone cultivators together to become a force that could threaten the authority of the imperial family over the country. Thus, the Heaven Military Hall has become more and more official, and there was an increasing government-approved quality about the place. However, there were still some things that were not appropriate to be registered on the records. There were some who would be receiving their mission requests in the underground, but that would mean there was no security provided. It was possible that the employer may not pay for the completed mission, or it could also be possible that even after completing the mission, there was no money received. One could only bear the risks on his own. There was only one rule in Heaven Military Hall. Everything could be done if there was enough money. Ling Han went to the bank, first to cash in his monetary notes, then headed towards the eastern part of the imperial city. That was where the Heaven Military Hall was located. Lu Yutong followed at Ling Han's heels, a worried frown over her face. Though the Earth and Water faction had a bad name, as if they were detested gutter rats, the faction leader was an authentic spiritual ocean tier elite. If one wanted to oppose this kind of powerful character, there was definitely a need to at least get the help of one elite of spiritual ocean tier, or perhaps even a few. Once one managed to reach the high level of spiritual ocean tier, would a martial artist still need to be a mercenary? He could simply join a powerful party and take the position of an elder, and would only need to cultivate every day. It was even fine if he decided to laze around and not cultivate. He only needed to step out and take action occasionally whenever he was needed. And what was the point of hiring a few hundred gushing, spring, tier martial artists against an opponent in a high layer of spiritual ocean tier? They would only be mowed over in a single move. Hunyao, meanwhile, was completely carefree, running all over the place, playing and laughing. "Damn girl, where's your guardian?" An angered voice was heard, attracting Ling Han's attention. The voice belonged to a sturdy man who had a street-side stall and who was currently shouting angrily at Hunyao. Apparently, Hunyao had bumped into some of his merchandise, but that was also because he himself had taken up too much space and had placed his merchandise all the way onto the street, making it unavoidable for those who wanted to pass to actually have to circle around his stall. The little girl, due to a moment of inattention, bumped into a few of his items. Hunyao was naturally not easily bullied. She bared her teeth and glared back at the sturdy man, her ferocious nature on full display. Ling Han walked over, rubbed Hunyo's head, and asked, "What is it?" "Your little girl made my things fall over, so you must pay the compensation," the sturdy man said, his stare fixed on Ling Han. While he spoke, for similarly tough-looking men stepped out behind him. They all crossed their arms in front of their chests, smirking coldly. Ling Han understood now. That man must have deliberately arranged his merchandise in such a way that they would cover a large part of the street. Once anyone accidentally bumped into his merchandise, he would take advantage of the opportunity and jump out immediately to ask for compensation. The other 4 men were naturally his accomplices and were there to add pressure to his threats. Ling Han's eyes swept over the merchandise the man had laid out. They were all counterfeit items. Some of what looked to be ginseng was actually mere carrots that had been joined with the top of a ginseng root. Some gold items were worthless, as their insides were filled with brass and the joint was very obvious. So how could they possibly deceive his eyes? He was just about to give these 5 people a little lesson when his eyes were attracted by a strangely shaped rock, and he could not help but ask, "What is the price of this rock?" The stall keeper was about to fly into a rage, but when he saw that Ling Han seemed interested in buying one of his merchandise, he could not help but smile, and answered, "I'll give you a cheaper price, 1,000 silver coins." 1,000 silver coins? He's gone crazy from wanting money, hasn't he? That's right. That's just a piece of worthless scrap. Even if it was an excellent rainflower stone or a heaven song stone, that kind of size would only be worth about 100+ silver coins. Hush! They're from the Earth and Water faction. You mustn't enrage them. They're always here bullying the locals, and no one will actually step out to handle them. There were some passers-by who could no longer stand by and watch, and immediately spoke out in rebuke. But there were others who revealed the identities of the 5 hooligans and advised them to watch what they said. "Fuck, if you guys dare speak any more nonsense, I'll chop you all to death." The stall keeper glared and showed off a fierce expression. The 4 men behind him all smirked coldly. Those who had spoken up in rebuke shivered, and indeed, they did not dare to speak any longer. "Brother, this is an exquisite spirit stone. Just look at how bizarrely shaped it is. It is an odd item that has been naturally formed in this way," the stall keeper boasted. "I don't like it." Ling Han shook his head. After he found out that these people were from the Earth and Water faction, he had the impulse to play a terrible joke on them. "Don't like it." The stall keeper laughed coldly. "If you don't like it, then why had you asked about it? Are you trying to play around with me? It's too late now. Whether you like it or not, you'll have to buy it now." What a bully! How can he force a sale like this? Who asked them to be from the Earth and Water faction? In the past, someone had previously reported the crime, but when the Imperial Guards came, it was completely useless. Instead, the Imperial Guards chatted and joked around with them. At the side, there were some who began exclaiming in rebuke about the injustice, but there were some experienced locals who revealed the truth of the matter helplessly. These local ruffians were completely secure, knowing that they had backing. Ling Han pretended to be scared and asked, "I'm not buying. Are you going to beat me up then?" This little girl pushed over a few of my items, and you wasted my time. If you buy this rock, then we'll forget all about the matter. Otherwise, The stallkeeper gave a signal, and the 4 men behind him simultaneously pulled out a dagger each and began to play with it. The threat was more than obvious. "Don't be hasty." Ling Han waved his hands hurriedly and said, "I'll buy it then." "Good." The stallkeeper smiled coldly. When he saw Ling Han behaving so weakly and so easily bullied, his greed could not help but swell, and he said, "The price has risen now. It's 2,000 silver coins." He glared fiercely at Ling Han and asked, "What is it? You don't want to pay?" "Here," Ling Han said as he handed over 2 monetary notes, each worth 1,000 silver coins. "Ha ha ha ha." The stall keeper laughed pompously. This brat had to be a fool from some rich family. He actually handed over the money so obediently. "Is this rock mine now?" Ling Han asked, smiling. "It's yours. It's yours." The stall keeper waved him off. He had discovered this rock in his backyard a few days ago. Because it was very weirdly shaped and had a bit of ornamental value, he had taken it out to sell it. His initial motive was naturally to deceive some fool into buying it off him, but he never thought that he would actually be able to sell it off for 2,000 silver coins. Lu Yutong watched the entire scene and could not help but feel secretly confused. With Ling Han's ability, handling these 5 local ruffians was naturally as easy as a piece of cake. But why had he deliberately allowed himself to be fooled? Ling Han laughed and gave a light tap on the rock. With the force of his origin power, Pa, there instantly appeared a few cracks on the surface of the rock. He lightly broke the pieces apart, and as the crushed pieces of rock fell, there actually appeared a flicker of gold light from within. Everyone could not help but turn to look. Chapter 191. Chapter 191. The Golden Flower of the Stone. Ling Han broke the rock apart in a few moves, and the golden light became stronger and stronger, before finally becoming a ball of resplendent light, so bright that it was not possible to open one's eyes to look at it. But the golden light very quickly paled and darkened, and in Ling Han's hand there shockingly appeared a golden plant. It looked like a chrysanthemum. The whole flower was sparkling and translucent, possessing an indescribable beauty to it. Oh! Everyone was exclaiming in shock. There was actually such a strange object growing inside a rock. No matter what it was really inconceivable. "Return this flower to me!" the stall keeper instantly shouted, his eyes red. Even if he had no idea what it was, he would have been able to guess that a plant growing within a rock was definitely an extraordinary treasure and not something that can be bought with a mere 2,000 silver coins. He had finally understood by now. Ling Han had only pretended to be scared previously, but in fact he had already had his eye fixed on this rock. This detestable brat. Ling Han only pretended he had not heard anything, and asked Hunyao, "Nyo, do you know what this is?" Hunyao sniffed it a few times and instantly put on a disinterested expression and said, "It's not delicious." Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "This is called the golden flower of the stone. It is formed through gathering spiritual qi from its surroundings and can only grow within this kind of stone of 9 poisons. It has the effect of curing poison. Only a tiny little petal would be enough to cure many of the poisons of this world. The stem is even more outstanding, as it can cure any poison. Brother, this golden flower of the stone is probably worth a lot, right?" one of the spectators asked. "Of course." Ling Han nodded. "It is unavoidable for martial artists to enter into areas that are filled with powerful poison to adventure, and merely placing a single petal of the golden flower of the stone in one's mouth would allow one to resist many poisons. Tell me, how much do you think it's worth?" "A petal is worth 10,000 silver coins," someone asked, his voice shaking. 10,000 coins? Ling Han shook his head with a smile and said, "The rewards would naturally be overwhelmingly large if one actually had to enter such a dangerous location on an adventure. It would be nothing strange to spend several million, or even several dozen million, just to prepare for such a journey. As a result, a single petal of this flower would be worth 100,000 coins, at the very least." There was a simultaneous, sharp intake of breath from all around them. A price of at least 100,000 coins that was really too terrifying, because this golden flower of the stone had exactly how many petals? At the very least, there were a few hundred petals there. Then that would be worth about a few dozen million. Moreover, the stem could apparently cure any conceivable poison, so it was naturally worth even more money. Ha, brat, give me back my golden flower of the stone." The stall keeper was also listening to Ling Han's explanation just now, and now that he knew the astronomical value of this golden flower, he was both shocked and delighted. He was secretly laughing at Ling Han for being an idiot, to actually reveal the existence of such a treasure in the public, and was also secretly delighted inside his heart. He was really going to make a huge amount of money this time round. "Is there something wrong with you?" Ling Han smiled calmly. "This is already mine, so what does it have to do with you?" "This is your money. I'm giving it back." The stall keeper threw out 2 monetary notes. "Now, give back my golden flower of the stone. The transaction has been completed, so this item is naturally mine, and I have no intention to sell it off to you," Ling Han said seriously. "Haha, who would dare not to sell me something that I, Wan Shizhong, want?" The stall keeper smirked and stretched out a hand towards Ling Han's neck. Hunyo moved, one smack from her, and with a pung, Wan Shizhong was instantly flung away, crashing heavily into a wall before slowly sliding down it. He had actually been smacked unconscious. Everyone was astonished. How could a little girl who was only about 5 to 6 years old have such powerful strength? Ling Han grabbed a piece of cloth and wrapped the golden flower of the stone in it. In such a public area, he dared not reveal the secret of the spatial ring. He turned to look at the other 4 ruffians and asked with a smile, "Are you guys planning to snatch my stuff too?" The 4 men hurriedly shook their heads, a layer of cold sweat collecting on their foreheads. Wan Shizhong was the strongest of the 5 of them. He was in the 8th layer of body refining tier and was actually smacked unconscious so easily by a little snip of a girl. So it was predictable that this young man would be even more remarkable. He was definitely playing the pig to eat the tiger just now, definitely pretending to be harmless previously to fool them. Just now, this guy deliberately showed his fear and was only trying to toy around with them. Now they had with their own hands sold off a priceless treasure for the cheap price of 2,000 coins. Whenever they recalled this in the future, they would definitely grieve and lament, with an increasing urge to commit suicide. To them, this was the heaviest kind of punishment. No wonder this brat revealed the golden flower of the stone in public. He was trying to provoke them. Damn him. Ling Han held onto Hunyo's hand and left proudly. Lu Yutong smiled, because she knew that Ling Han must have noticed something about the rock to put on such an act. The 2 adults and 1 child left very quickly, leaving behind the envious and impressed gazes of the crowd. Big Brother Shizhong. The 4 ruffians hurriedly went to help Wan Shizhong up. After pinching his Renjong and pouring cold water on him, they finally managed to pull Wan Shizhong back to consciousness. "Ah!" Wan Shizhong shouted loudly, "My treasure!" He suddenly jumped up from the ground and realized that there were people looking at him from all around, wearing expressions that showed they were enjoying his misfortune. He could not help but flush brightly at this, both humiliated and enraged. "Big Brother Shizhong, what do we do now?" the 4 ruffians asked. Wan Shizhong thought for a moment, then said, "2 of you follow that brat and see where he's going. The other 2 of you will come back with me and ask Hall Leader AI to step out and snatch back the treasure. But Big Brother Shizhong, if we ask for Hall Leader AI's help, the bigger share will definitely have to go to him," one of the ruffians said cautiously. "Pa!" Wan Shizhong gave him a slap and rebuked him. "Are you an idiot? If we don't get Hall Leader AI to deal with that brat, we won't get anything at all. If Hall Leader AI manages to snatch back the treasure, then we'd at least get something." Right. Big Brother Shizhong is indeed clever. The 4 ruffians nodded in agreement. "Then let's go." Wan Shizhong glared at them. "What about the things here?" One of the ruffians pointed at the items still laid out in the stall. "They're not worth much anyways. Moreover, who would dare to steal my stuff?" The 5 of them immediately went off on their respective missions. 2 followed behind Ling Han, while the other 3 went off to get help. How could they bear to simply let the matter go when it involved a treasure that was worth a few dozen million? "Young Master Han, there's someone following us," Lu Yutong said suddenly. "Just let them follow. When there's enough of them later, I'll deal with them in one go," Ling Han said, smiling. Niu wants to beat up 10. Hu Niu said, excitedly. The little girl had grown up by the side of a ferocious beast, and her wild nature was very dominant, a part of her personality. She was especially fond of violence. All right. Ling Han laughed. There was an extremely weird spirit base in the body of this little girl. In the future, even the whole world could possibly tremble because of her. What more just to beat up 10 people? Lu Yutong could not help but roll her eyes. Ling Han actually taught Hu Niu like this. Wasn't he just egging her on to do whatever she liked? As they walked, they soon arrived at the Heaven Military Hall. This was indeed a lively place. There was a great hall that was a dazzling sight, while a square-shaped plaza surrounded it on all sides. There was a large number of people on this plaza, and there were even some who were holding on to signs for recruitment in order to form a group to complete a mission. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Let's hold up signs for recruitment as well." They never imagined that buying a sign here would be so expensive. A seller actually quoted a price of 10 silver coins. Ling Han did not mind, but Lu Yutong could not bear wasting money so pointlessly and glared furiously at the seller for quite a while. Ling Han began to write on the sign in his good penmanship. Then he tied it in a fixed position on a rock. Instantly, he became the focus of everyone's attention. Chapter 192. Chapter 192. Going to the Earth and Water faction for a walk. That was because the words written on the sign that Ling Han had put up were indeed a bit shocking. Recruiting people to go to the Earth and Water faction for a fight. Rewards are as follows. Gushing Spring Tier, 10,000 silver coins per day. Spiritual Ocean Tier, 100,000 silver coins per day. Element Gathering Tier need not apply. Go to the Earth and Water faction for a fight. What kind of a place was the Earth and Water faction? It had a Spiritual Ocean Tier elite to oversee things, and was at the same level as a middle-class clan. Going there to fight, then that would mean having to stand against a Spiritual Ocean Tier elite. There were only so many Spiritual Pedestal Tier elites in Rain Country, and underneath Spiritual Pedestal Tier, the strongest would be Spiritual Ocean Tier. Who would dare go to make trouble? However, on the other hand, the rewards that Ling Han promised were indeed enough of a shock themselves. A Gushing Spring Tier martial artist would be able to earn 10,000 in one day, while a Spiritual Ocean Tier martial artist could earn 100,000 per day. Earning 100,000 per day. That would mean earning 3 million in a single month. What kind of unbelievable concept was that? Even if it was a great clan like one of the 8 great clans, their net monthly income would not exceed 10 million. And now a single person would be able to earn 3 million. That was comparable to 1/3 of the monthly income of a great clan. How shocking was that? Moreover, the 8 great clans were only able to earn so much profit because they had Spiritual Pedestal Tier elites in their ranks, and now 3 Spiritual Ocean Tier martial artists would be able to earn about the same amount. All of a sudden, this attracted the attention of a lot of people, but all of them were merely watching. None actually approached to get the exact details of the mission. After all, Ling Han was really much too young. Who would believe that he would be able to produce such a massive sum of money? Moreover, the Earth and Water faction was nothing to play around with. Thus, everyone merely chose to stand by and watch at this point in time. You can't simply set up a sign here. If the contract has not obtained the acknowledgement and guarantee of the Heaven Military Hall, everyone will not believe that you really have such wealth, Lu Yutong reminded. All right then, let's go inside then. Ling Han strode towards the Heaven Military Hall. He came to a free window and said, "I would like to post a mission." "Young master, what mission would you like to post?" the young girl who was in charge of registering missions asked. She was quite a pretty girl. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Going to the Earth and Water faction for a fight." The young girl's pretty face twitched uncontrollably. She was naturally aware of what kind of place the Earth and Water faction was. She shook her head quickly and said, "Young master, don't joke around. The Earth and Water faction is a party of the Imperial City. Putting aside whether you have such ability, young master, even if you do have, the Imperial Guards will still stop you from going there to make trouble. The Heaven Military Hall will not accept such a request. Then how about this? Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, change it to going to the Earth and Water faction for a walk, recruiting people to protect me. For a walk. The young girl's mouth once again twitched. Who would simply allow intruders to enter into their home to take a walk? There's no problem with this kind of request, right? Ling Han asked, smiling. On the surface, there was naturally no issue with going for a walk, but anyone would know that this going for a walk was actually going for a fight. The young girl grimaced, then said, there is indeed no problem, but young master. If there's no problem, then hang up the mission for me. You do not have to bother about any other things. Ling Han smiled, handed over some monetary notes, and said, the rewards are as follows. He recited the rewards list, then added, 10 spiritual ocean tier martial artists would be enough, and gushing spring tier, 100 should be good enough. The expression of the pretty young girl immediately changed. What a humongous expense was this? Her first reaction was that Ling Han must be joking, but there was nothing false about the monetary notes that he had handed over. The total amount was 6 million. It was enough to hire such a group for up to 3 days. This young master was an extremely rich young man. She hurriedly registered Ling Han's request. Anyways, as long as there was no breach of the Heaven Military Hall's rules and the rewards were paid, then however weird or bizarre a request it would be announced to all the members of the Heaven Military Hall. Because the reward for this request was so colossal, it instantly became the focus of attention. What? Hiring bodyguards to go for a walk at the Earth and Water faction. Is this some kind of joke? Don't care whether it's a joke or not. Now that it is posted, then that means that there is absolutely no problem with the validity of the reward. Hiss, a day equals 10,000. If you're in spiritual ocean tier, you can even earn 100,000. The whole plaza became lively. Some of them recalled the signboard that Ling Han had put up previously, and they went over to find him. Ling Han was already standing there, and those people immediately began inquiring him about the details of the request. Young master, I am in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, and have 1 foot into gushing spring tier. How about it? I only want 5,000 silver coins. I am in the 8th layer of element gathering tier, and I only require 4,000 coins. Those inquiring were mostly all in element gathering tier, and were only there to join in on the excitement. Meanwhile, those spiritual ocean tier elites were merely observing. After all, the Earth and Water faction was not something to joke about. Ling Han merely pointed at the sign that he had put up. What did he need element gathering tier martial artists for? He himself was in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, and gathering a bunch of lackeys at this level was not impressive enough. His eyes swept over the surroundings, when a smile suddenly appeared on his face. He walked forwards, where a middle-aged man was sitting on a stone lion. There was a wine gourd in his hand, and he kept pouring wine into his mouth endlessly. This brat has quite good eyes, to actually fix his eye on Master Guangyuan. What? The Master Guangyuan, who is known to be able to shatter a mountain with 7 punches. That's right. He's one of the top 10 strongest warriors of our Heaven Military Hall. His cultivation level is the 5th layer of spiritual ocean tier. In the past, he was also considered as a genius of martial arts, but for some unknown reason, has been stagnating on the 5th layer of spiritual ocean tier for such a long time. Are you an idiot? Every step in spiritual ocean tier is as difficult as climbing to heaven. It is not uncommon for some to be stuck for their whole life in this tier. When they saw that middle-aged man, everyone exclaimed in shock. Ling Han naturally did not know that this large man's name was Guangyuan. He had only noticed the latter's cultivation level, and so had decided to approach him. However, as his attention became more focused, he found out even more information, and he could not help but smile. The more you drink to forget your troubles, the more troubled you will feel, he said to Guang Yuan. What does a little brat know about troubles? Guang Yuan asked calmly, not even turning around to look at Ling Han. You're cultivating the large sun heaven heart scroll, right? Ling Han lowered his voice considerably, only loud enough for just Guang Yuan to hear. Guang Yuan's expression changed drastically, and he could not help but stop his actions of continuing to drink. He looked towards Ling Han, and similarly lowered his voice to a whisper and asked, How did you know? I not only know that you're cultivating the large sun heaven heart scroll, I also know that you have made some mistake in your cultivation. At present, isn't the third bone on your spine faintly aching? Ling Han asked calmly. This time, Guang Yuan could no longer maintain his composure. He suddenly leaped up from the stone lion, stood in front of Ling Han, and asked, Who are you? It was only in this year that he had discovered there was a problem in his cultivation, and the symptoms were exactly like what Ling Han had pointed out. The third bone of his spine would faintly ache. Come, come, come. Accept my request, and I will give you a very fortunate opportunity. It will not only solve your current problem, you may even be able to advance further, Ling Han said, smiling faintly, like a demon bewitching a human. It was only now that Guang Yuan saw the sign that Ling Han had put up. He could not help but wear a strange expression and said, You have quite a bold personality. Not too bad. That's why I'm looking for a few bodyguards. Ling Han said, smiling. A thoughtful expression appeared on Guang Yuan's face. Since Ling Han could tell that he was cultivating the large sun heaven heart scroll, and could also tell that he had encountered a problem in his cultivation, then that would imply that there was a very high chance that Ling Han could solve his problem. He decided to take the gamble. All right then, I'll accept this request. Chapter 193. Chapter 193. Successfully gathering a group. Guang Yuan had not purposely lowered his voice when he said this, so those around them heard his words very clearly. What? Shatter a mountain with 7 punches. Master Guang Yuan has accepted the request. That's Master Guang Yuan we're talking about here. With Master Guang Yuan there, what's there to be afraid of? I'm applying too. When they saw that Guang Yuan had accepted the request, a considerable number of gushing spring tier elites too exclaimed, expressing their interest. Please go to the main hall to obtain the mission, Ling Han said, smiling. Then come back here to gather. Is today considered one day as well? They all thought that this was inconceivable. Of course, Ling Han said casually. This brat definitely had to have enough money to burn. It was almost noon by now, which mean that half the day's money had already been burnt. However, such a rich employer would be favored by everyone, wouldn't he? With the participation of a spiritual ocean tier elite, the rest were naturally feeling braver. Even if the sky fell down on them, there would be someone taller to hold it up. The power of setting an example was great, as very soon there were other elites of spiritual ocean tier who decided to accept the request. In this manner, so what if they decided to barge into the earth and water faction? If Yan Tian-du did not want to participate in a conflict that would damage both sides equally, he would only be able to swallow his anger. The more spiritual ocean tier elites accepted the request, the more attractive this mission naturally became. Anyways, they only needed to keep Ling Han safe, and there was no need for them to flout the law in any way, so they would at least be able to retreat unscathed from this. After another hour had passed, the 100 gushing spring tier martial artists were successfully gathered. In fact, there were even more gushing spring tier martial artists who were interested in joining, but Ling Han did not need too many of them. However, there were only 7 spiritual ocean tier elites. After all, spiritual ocean tier elites could definitely be considered the absolutely elite, powerful warriors. It was not an easy feat for a lone cultivator to make it this far. In fact, Being able to recruit 7 of such powerful warriors in just over an hour's time was enough of a miraculous feat itself. Firstly, it was because the rewards that Ling Han had posted were attractive enough, and secondly, with the participation of Guang Yuan, he influenced those who were still wavering and hesitating to join. 7 spiritual ocean tier elites should be about enough. Ling Han considered for a moment. Though it was not as impressive as having 10 to back him, it was not too bad either. "Young Master Han, when are we leaving?" those gathered asked Ling Han, though they were all at a higher cultivation level than Ling Han. But who asked him to be their employer? Lone cultivators were not as proud as the clan members of prominent clans. Otherwise, they would definitely not be addressing Ling Han as Young Master Han, unless they knew his background. When those who went to accept the mission return, "We'll set out," Ling Han said. "All right." Everyone nodded, practically able to see in their minds a huge sum of money waving at them. "That's him." It was at this moment that a man nearby pointed at Ling Han, his face filled with fury. It was Wan Shizhong, who had previously forced Ling Han to buy his merchandise and attempted to force him to sell back. There were a few other people around him. 4 of them were his lackeys, and there was another middle-aged man who had a much steadier aura about him. This man was a gushing spring tier elite. The middle-aged man's name was AI Song, and he was one of the hall leaders of the Earth and Water faction. When he heard Wan Shizhong tell him about the incident involving the golden flower of the stone, he instantly could not hold back his greed and followed them here. "Brat, Wan Shizhong of our faction mistakenly sold off a treasured item of our faction. Give us back the treasured item." AI Song shouted at Ling Han, a haughty expression on his face. Those who had agreed to accept Ling Han's request immediately looked fierce at this. Their mission was to ensure Ling Han's safety. They never thought that the enemies would already appear when they hadn't even stepped out of Heaven Military Hall. It was indeed quite intriguing. These lone cultivators were all living on the edge of danger. It could be claimed that they had managed to come this far on their path of cultivation all with their own power-off course. There were few who had done despicable acts before, such as robbery and murder. They were more rounded, tougher, and more warlike than those who had grown up under the protection of their respective clans. It was too bad that AI Song did not have enough self-awareness and felt too secure in himself, so sure that he would be able to easily dominate such a youngster like Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "He sold it, and I bought it, so the item is naturally mine. I don't have any interest to sell it off, so get lost. Get lost." AI Song's previously haughty expression became extremely ugly, as if he had been suddenly punched, and he asked darkly, "Brat, do you know who I am?" "An idiot trying to give me a laugh," Ling Han said, smiling. "W what?" AI Song was stunned for a moment, before looking extremely enraged. Ling Han continued, "I realize that all idiots have a common characteristic, and that is they all like to ask, 'Do you know who I am?' or 'Are you aware of who I am?' How the fuck should I know what idiot you are? You're seeking death." AI Song finally could no longer hold himself back. He gave a great leap and pounced towards Ling Han, delivering a punch. He wanted to severely injure this brat who had spoken such insolent words. "Get back, idiot." A figure leaped out and similarly threw a punch towards AI Song. Pung! The 2 men's fists collided against each other, instantly creating a visible ripple that spread out in all directions. AI Song trembled, and tongue, retreated a whole 13 steps. The other person was also forced backwards, though he merely took 7 steps backwards. AI Song could not help but reveal a resentful expression, and said, "What a good brat to actually dare to speak so insolently to me. So there is someone to back you. And who are you? Are you aware of who I am?" When he spoke the last words, he suddenly recalled what Ling Han had said just now, and could not help but look slightly embarrassed. "How do I know who you are, idiot?" The man shrugged. He was naturally one of the bodyguards that Ling Han had recruited. His name was Husan, and he was in the 4th layer of gushing spring tear. Ha 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 ha. The others began to laugh as well. AI Song gave a humph and said, "Don't think that you are powerful enough to dominate over me. I had just been a bit careless just now." This was the truth. He naturally could not beat Ling Han to death, so had used very little power in that punch just now. "I am AI Song, the Hall leader of the Loyalty Hall of Earth and Water faction. Do you still intend to stand against me?" he added. Everyone could not help but say, "Oh." No wonder he seemed to hold such a grudge against Ling Han, because Ling Han was indeed going to deal with the Earth and Water faction. They did not know that they had not guessed correctly at all. "Get lost." Hussein glared. Though lone cultivators were very weak on their own, they still had one advantage, and that was the fact they had nothing to worry about. They did not have to worry about such things like if any conflict would rise up between their clan and their opponent's clan, because they had no clan. If they wanted to fight, they would. If they weren't strong enough to beat their opponent, they could flee. In the worst-case scenario, they could hide somewhere for a few years. Very good. To actually dare to go against our Earth and Water faction. How bold! AI Song said furiously. Ling Han walked towards Wan Shizhong, smiled, and said, "It just so happens that I don't know where the lair of the Earth and Water faction is. Let us there then." Insolence! AI Song once again acted, but Hussein once again punched out and blocked his attack. Ling Han stretched out a hand to grab him, and Wan Shizhong was easily subdued. He smiled faintly and said, "I gave you a chance. It's too bad you did not cherish it, and came back to make trouble with me. You should know that there will not always be second chances available in life." Pa! His hands moved, and Wan Shizhong's right arm was instantly broken, hanging on at a terrifying angle. It was a sight that would make anyone shiver. "Ah!" Wan Shizhong instantly wailed in agony. This time, not just AI Song, even Guang Yuan and the others were extremely shocked, because it was not a small issue to cause injury to another in such a public area in the imperial city. This brat was really a bit too ruthless, wasn't he? Chapter 194. Chapter 194. You extort me. Reverie _ Good, good, good. You dare harm the people of Earth and Water faction. You're seeking your own death. AI Song smiled coldly and turned to leave. He wasn't running, but he was going to find the Imperial Guards. A place like Heavenly Military Hall where there were many martial artists and lone martial artists who were ill-tempered and impulsive was one where a fight could break out just because of a single disagreement. So there were Imperial Guards posted here to deter troublemakers and police the area. "Master Han, it's troublesome now," said someone pointing at Wan Shizhong. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "No matter." Guang Yuan and the others frowned and thought that Ling Han was too arrogant. Those who went against the imperial law never came to a good end. Just a short while later, AI Song led 2 Imperial Guards over. These 2 Imperial Guards were only at 9th element gathering tier, but as they approached, everyone made way. The people weren't scared of those 2, but of the uniforms on them that represented the Emperor's power and law. "These 2 sirs, this is the child publicly harming people at Heaven Military Temple," said AI Song, pointing at Ling Han, who was still in control of the whimpering Wan Shizhong. It was practically irrefutable evidence. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "You can eat whatever you want, but you can't irresponsibly speak as you wish. This guy fell on his own, breaking even his arm. I kindly helped him up. I'll let it pass that I'm not even given a Good Samaritan award, but how could you extort me?" This not only enraged AI Song, but also made Guang Yuan and the others speechless. This guy was too good at making stuff up, even going as far as making a bogus claim. "What really happened?" said an Imperial Guard, who looked towards Ling Hang with a hint of awe. This was really inconceivable that the law enforcement team belonging directly to the Emperor's family would revere a young man. But the truth was so. Ling Han knew that they recognized his identity. 2 great alchemy masters backed him. So how could they not know him considering the grasp of the emperor's family? Thus, the imperial guards definitely received orders that as long as Ling Han didn't commit murder and arson, no amount of disturbance would matter. Contrarily, if Ling Han faced danger, these imperial guards would have to protect him, or they wouldn't be able to justify themselves to the two great alchemy masters. However, from this, it could be seen that Feng Yan had an even more terrifying background, because when Feng Yan slashed the cart on the streets, no imperial guards ran out and just let them stir up trouble all they wanted. Two sirs, the situation is clear. This guy is the culprit. AI Song shouted. An imperial guard's expression turned solemn, and he said, "This young master said it well. Words shouldn't be said irresponsibly. Do you have proof?" Proof? Did this still need proof? It couldn't be more obvious. Or were you too blind? AI Song had a stomach full of rage, but with the thought of the status of these imperial guards, he could only calmly say, "Wan Shizhong, you come tell these two sirs." Wan Shizhong endured the pain and said, "Two sirs, it's him. He was the one who broke my arm." He was tricked by Ling Hang into giving the golden flower of the stone, slapped dizzy by Hunyao, and now his arm was broken by Ling Han. Naturally, he hated Ling Han and Ling Han's companions to the bones. Pah! Ling Han immediately slapped Wan Shizhong in the back of his head and said coldly, "You shameful thing. I kindly helped you up, yet you bite like a mad dog. Do I look easy to bully?" Wan Shizhong almost fainted. He forcefully bought and sold, not counting how many evil deeds he'd done. But being unjustly treated was a first. He felt so aggrieved that his veins were going to explode. He did it. Wan Shizhong's 4 underlings all stood forward to testify. Lord's imperial guards were all witnesses. Surely we're not all trying to extort him, said AI Song coldly. Oh, so you can make up facts with more witnesses. Ling Han laughed lightly, then turned to speak to the crowd. Did I break this man's arm? No. Guang Yuan and the others all said with a smile. The lone cultivators often have wild and intractable dispositions. Some even wished for mayhem. Naturally, they all started to stir up a fuss. Ling Han shrugged and said, "These 2 Imperial Guard brothers, you both heard them. I have more witnesses that say I didn't break this guy's arm. As shameless." AI Song's face twitched. Water and Earth faction could be said as the most infamous force within the Imperial City. As long as money could be made, all jobs were accepted no matter how dirty it was. But even AI Song wanted to yell out shameful. It was apparent how angry Ling Han made him. "Boy, is it really wise for you to go against Earth and Water faction?" he said threateningly. "Dear Imperial Guard brothers, this guy is threatening me, you all heard, right? If anything happens to me from today on, just look for him," said Ling Han quickly. The 2 Imperial Guards immediately looked towards AI Song, and one of them said, "Sir AI Song, please be careful. Some words should not be said irresponsibly." AI Song's cheek twitched. Was the Imperial Army established by this boy? Why did they side with him so much? 2 Imperial Guard brothers, there is nothing going on here that needs your attention, so how about you go back to relax and drink some tea? Ling Han said with a smile. The 2 Imperial Guards threw a quick warning glance at AI Song. Do not cause any trouble, or even the Earth and Water faction won't be able to shield you. Having said that, the 2 soon turned around and left. This made AI Song realize that Ling Han's background was definitely not ordinary. He gave Ling Han a deep look, then said, "Young man, just what is your identity?" "So you don't know? How do you get by in the Imperial City?" Ling Han shook his head, then continued, "Go back to Yang Tiandu. Tell him I'll be going on a walk to visit the Earth and Water faction soon. So he should prepare." "What?" AI Song raised his voice involuntarily. "You actually dare to come to our Earth and Water faction?" "What? Do you want me to tell me that the Earth and Water faction is some kind of a dragon's pond or a tiger's cave? If there's really some dragon there, then it'll have to coil before me, and if there's a tiger, it'll have to lie down for me. Ling Han gestured for him to leave by waving his hands and said, "Get lost, I have no time for a nobody like you." Good, good, good. AI Song clenched his teeth. First of all, he was unable to do anything with Hu San present here. Second of all, the Imperial Guards here were too chummy with Ling Han. Calling them in again would be just a waste of time and effort. Filled with hate, he turned around and left. As for Wan Shizhong, he was naturally completely ignored by him. There were plenty of such nobodies in the Earth and Water faction, let alone one. Even if 100 or 1,000 died, it wouldn't matter. My lord, my lord! Wan Shizhong followed the departing AI Song with a look full with despair. Ling Han even dared to break his arms in front of AI Song, so would Ling Han kill him now? Wan Shizhong couldn't help but tremble in fear and almost pissed himself. Don't worry, I abide by the law. How could I possibly kill you? Ling Han smiled at him. Well, what are you waiting for? Lead the way. We're going for a walk to the Earth and Water faction. Wan Shizhong and his 4 sidekicks were helpless and could only go forward to lead the way while secretly praying that Ling Han would walk right into a trap upon their arrival and suffer big time. However, when they saw that the number of people following Ling Han was over 100, they almost pissed themselves again. Chapter 195. Chapter 195. Barging in. Ling Han and his group made for a grand display. There was a smile with hidden depths around the lips of Guang Yuan and the rest. They were all lone cultivators and had untamed temperaments, but none of them were idiots. When they saw the attitude of those 2 Imperial Guards, they realized that Ling Han was definitely someone from a prominent background. After all, even the Imperial Guard seemed to have gone blind and acted so partial towards him in the conflict. It seemed like there wouldn't be any mishaps happening on this trip. There were only 3 spiritual ocean tier and a few dozen gushing spring tier martial artists in the Earth and Water faction, much worse off than their group in terms of quality. The group proudly walked through the streets and soon arrived at the Earth and Water faction. Though the Earth and Water faction was named a faction, in truth, there was not much difference between it and any other ordinary clan-based party. They had a very large courtyard in the Imperial City, and all the high-ranking leaders of the faction lived here. Currently, there was a state of alert in the area at the main doors. Obviously, AI Song had returned with his information, and the Earth and Water faction had reacted accordingly. Mister, you first snatched a treasure from one of the members of our faction, and now you come here so forcefully. Do you think that there is no one who can stand against you in our Earth and Water faction and are trying to bully us? An old man asked darkly, a very powerful aura emanating from him. Ling Han could not help but laugh. It seemed that the Earth and Water faction mistakenly believed that the whole matter was due to the golden flower of the stone. He shook his head and said, Your intelligence department is really too poor, isn't it? You crashed so many of my shops and don't even know who I am? The old man was an elder of the Earth and Water faction, in the second layer of spiritual ocean tier. His name was Lu Yu. He stared at Ling Han for a moment, but still thought that the latter looked unfamiliar to him. True, crashing the shops of others was only a small business for the Earth and Water faction, and could not possibly disturb such a high-ranking person as he, so he had no idea that the faction had made this kind of enemy. At this moment, a nearby middle-aged man's expression changed. He approached and whispered quietly into Lu Yu's ear. The old man nodded slightly and assumed a disapproving expression. Fuck, so it's just a small matter of several clothing stores being smashed. In Lu Yu's opinion, how could the value of a few clothing stores compare to the golden flower in the stone? You snatched a treasure from one of the members of the faction, and its value was several hundred times the value of those clothing stores that had been smashed. No matter how he looked at it, it was the Earth and Water faction that was the victim here. This brat had to be a young master from some wealthy family, spoilt since his birth. That was why he had been so impulsive, actually coming over to seek vengeance, just because a few of his stores had been crashed. I don't know what you're talking about. You're simply trying to smear the name of our faction. Lu Yu completely denied the accusation of his stores being smashed by members of the faction. This was, after all, nothing to be proud of, how the Earth and Water faction was a faction of hooligans and ruffians in the eyes of the residents of the Imperial City. They had a high opinion of themselves. Leave behind the golden flower in the stone and pay a further compensation of 10 million. Then you can get lost, he said aggressively to Ling Han. Ling Han laughed and said, How overbearing! However, do you have the ability to be overbearing? He walked towards the main doors. Insolence! Immediately, someone jumped out and stretched out a hand to grab Ling Han's throat, intending to subdue him in a single move. Get lost! A person also jumped out from behind Ling Han. The light of his sword flowed like water and swept towards that man who had jumped out earlier. That man of the Earth and Water faction could not help but tense up and hurriedly bent to avoid the blow. There was now a middle-aged man standing in front of Ling Han, wielding a sword and exuding aura that was not the slightest bit weaker than his. Ling Han did not even pause in his steps and continued his advance. Such a contemptuous attitude greatly enraged the people of the Earth and Water faction. They all jumped out and charged towards Ling Han. However, those people that Ling Han had hired were naturally not going to be paid for not doing anything. They too jumped out and protected Ling Han. This was a battle of 100 against 13. Ling Han's side was greatly at the advantage. Moreover, there were still 7 spiritual ocean tier elites who had yet to make a move. It was only now that Lu Yu discovered that there were 7 people whose aura was not any weaker than his, and he could not help but tense up. If they were in gushing spring tier, it would be useless no matter how many there were. He would only need to heavily injure a few of them quickly, and it was practically guaranteed that the rest would flee like rats. Lone cultivators were more ruthless than anyone at times when they were at an advantageous position, but once they fell into a disadvantage, then they would definitely be like a sheet of loose sand and flee faster than anyone else. However, there now actually appeared 7 people in spiritual ocean tier. This could be problematic. This brat was indeed very wealthy, actually managing to hire spiritual ocean tier elites. No wonder he dared to come here to challenge them. Lu Yu thought for a moment, then said, Friends, no matter what kind of conditions this brat has promised you, as long as you all choose to stand by and do nothing today, then whatever reward he has promised you will be from our Earth and Water faction. He was quite a decisive man. Guang Yuan laughed and said, Elder Lu, a man has to be true to his word. Moreover, we have already accepted the mission at the Heaven Military Hall. If we drop the ball now, who would dare to hire us in future? You know who I am? Lu Yu asked. Hee. Elder Lu Yu's nickname is Soft Light Needle. No one would know when you used your hidden weapons, who would not recognize you. Guang Yuan said calmly, then gave a wave of his hand and said, The main character today is young Master Han. Anything you want to say it to young Master Han. We are just responsible for ensuring his safety. Old fox. Lu Yu cursed internally. He had wanted to use the Earth and Water faction to force them to submit, but he easily pushed all the responsibility onto Ling Han. This gave him a feeling like he had thrown a punch into a ball of wool. It was not a good feeling. Brat, if you stop now, it's still not too late, he said to Ling Han. As long as you pay the compensation for the losses of our faction, fuck! While he was chattering, Ling Han had suddenly thrown a powerful punch and actually punched down the inscribed sign hanging over their doors. With a pang, it fell onto the ground. The sign was made of bronze, and when it crashed onto the floor, it created a loud noise that shocked quite a few people. When the people of the Earth and Water factions saw this, their eyes reddened. That was the signboard of the Earth and Water faction. As the saying went, when you get into a fight, never aim for the face. This signboard was equivalent to the face of the Earth and Water faction, and now was punched down by Ling Han onto the ground. Naturally, everyone was enraged. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, You seem to have had quite a lot of fun in my stores last night. Today, I will let you enjoy the same thing too." He raised his foot before suddenly slamming it down. The strength of a martial artist in the 9th layer of element gathering tier burst out, and Pa, the signboard, was instantly broken into 2 halves. "You're seeking death." The members of the Earth and Water faction were all greatly enraged, wanting nothing more than to tear Ling Han into pieces. Though murder was against the law in the Imperial City, it did not mean that you still had to endure it when your enemies were at your doorstep. There would be no punishment for those who injured others or even killed their enemies in self-defense. Ignorant brat! Lu Yu's killing intent was on full display. He leaped towards Ling Han, raised his hand, and xiao, 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 9 golden needles flew out. These needles were instilled with his unique origin power and had the ability to pierce through any defenses of origin power. It was a vicious attack. "Elder Yu, your opponent is me." Guang Yuan gave a loud shout. His body lightly trembled and actually shone with an endless golden light, as if he was a Buddha. He struck out with one hand and shouted, "The teachings of Buddha is without boundary, surpassing death." Hung! The golden light shone resplendently, indescribably vast and powerful. Ling Han did not even spare a glance. He simply continued to stride forward and entered the Earth and Water faction's headquarters. He smiled slightly and said to Hu Niu, "Come, come, come. Let's have a little contest and see who can make more damage. Niu will definitely win." Hu Niu said in exhilaration,